Well, Mark, John, and the KCMO Talk Radio audience, Bill O'Reilly says hello. That's all I've got on a Monday morning. It is great to be here at 6:04. Thanks for joining us as we start off the week, and we appreciate you kicking off that week with us. So Saturday, I guess it was late morning, I had the opportunity to sit down and visit with Bill O'Reilly. It's year 5 or 6 getting together, spending some time with him, and basically me trying to convince him that he needs to get out to Arrowhead Stadium and join us for a Chiefs game. But now with the Mahomes injury, of course, it's like, well, is he going to be back? I want to see Patrick. When are we going to do this? But, I told him Mark's got a great parlay lined up for him as well if he comes out to the game. And Mark will give him a can't-miss 12-way parlay that Bill will make a fortune on. So I put a lot of pressure on you there, Mark, but I think you're up to the task.
That's all right. I work best under pressure.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So, no, we had a great visit on Saturday. We spent about an hour or so together on Bill's back porch. He's got a beautiful, beautiful home overlooking the Atlantic Ocean at the end of Long Island. And we covered a lot of things, right? I mean, we'll get to some of the news stuff that we talked about, Trump, Iran, where this is all going. But I will say he is very grateful for this audience, for you, for the loyalty that he's received from KCMO Talk Radio over the several years he's been coming on this show. And one thing that he noted, and I wanted to share this with you, it's a little inside baseball, but I wanted to share this with you, and that is, he said to me, Pete, there's a lot of talk radio that he does, obviously, around the country. And he said it's amazing how hollowed out some of these radio stations are in major markets. Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston. They don't have the juice. They don't have the local nature of what they do. They don't get big name guests. They just don't have the pull that they did maybe 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago. And he said what you guys have on KCMO is a great blend of local and national and guest booking. I mean, he follows the industry and knows what we do. And he said it's a real testament to you guys in Kansas City and that community and what you have. And the talk radio scene in Kansas City is, in his opinion, across the board, better than some of the so-called bigger markets around the country. So he was very complimentary from that perspective. Now, he also knows that, whether it's radio or TV, obviously there are challenges right now that the industry is facing. But we agreed from a pure radio perspective, things are in a better place than they are in cable news land, where the median average viewer is now 70 years old. That's not the case in radio. People are getting in their cars this morning. They're driving to work. I mean, the 25, 35, 45, 55-year-old person is consuming, by the data, much more radio than they are cable news because they're in the car, and that's still the go-to media outlet when you're driving to work. We may not have the pull in the homes that we used to, but that's why we're streaming on the app. We're on Google, we're on Alexa, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're in all these different places because we want you to find us everywhere that you are. But cable news has itself a major problem from a pure linear perspective, and that's just that they don't have the younger demos checking them out. Radio still has that. So from a pure business perspective, we had a great conversation on that front. Now, Bill's got some concerns about AI in our business and what that may mean. But we also agreed, you can't AI this show. Could you AI a TV news? Could the next John Holt, could the next Chris Ketz, and those guys aren't going anywhere. I'm saying down the road. Could those guys be AI'd one day where you get, I don't want to say a better-looking John Holt because that's almost impossible. I mean, it doesn't get much better looking than John Holt on Fox 4. Same thing with Ketz and Brad Stevens and all those guys. They're on TV for a reason. But could you get a slightly better-looking version of those guys, pump in some news writer algorithm, and then have some robot read you the nightly news? That's possible. Could you duplicate personality-driven talk radio? Not yet. Now, maybe one day it's coming. maybe, I don't know how you AI John Anthony one-liners into the show. It almost seems impossible to do. Not even Elon Musk could figure out a way to do that. But we agreed that AI is only going to be a bigger part of what we do every single day and a bigger part of the business model as it relates to media in general. So that was, I think, a part of the conversation that I thought was pretty compelling with him. And then, get this, it's not a secret, but I'm sharing this with you because of the advice that Bill gave his son, who is now working in the White House. And he said to his son, he said, my only or my biggest piece of advice is do not speak unless spoken to, and do exactly what you are being asked to do. And I was like, you know what? That's pretty good advice for anybody in their first job. Never mind when you're Bill O'Reilly's son and you're now in the White House. That is probably the right move. Do not speak unless spoken to. Keep your head down and work your absolute tail off. Now, when it comes to the news of the day in the visit with O'Reilly over the weekend, and by the way, I shared some photos on the Facebook page, also on my Instagram stories at Pete Mundo. You can find it there. I believe the stories are still up on Instagram. But either way, they're on my social media channels. We talked about Iran. And Bill noted that he talked to the president before the initial attacks against Iran going back to late February. And he told him, he said, listen, this is the biggest gamble of your life. And it's turned out to be. And now over the weekend, listen, it certainly has not gotten better. You heard at the top of the hour news, oil prices are ticking up. They're not skyrocketing. They're sitting right now at about $82 a barrel as the markets get set to open up here in a couple hours. But, we've lost now 17 service members. That's the number of dead U.S. service members after the weekend. Had a couple in Jordan on Friday. U.S. military said the service member also was killed in Iraq on Saturday during a controlled detonation of a downed Iranian drone. So 3 over the weekend. And now the United States is conducting a new round of airstrikes. This was early Monday morning. So this morning, targeting Iran after announcing the death of another American service member. And Iran fired missiles towards Jordan that risked widening the conflict into neighboring Israel. So here we are. Step by step, the U.S. and Iran have inched closer to all-out war. Now, a month ago, it was like we've got a deal, we've got a memorandum of understanding, and this is all now coming to an end. It's arguably worse today than it was 2 months ago. And that's why this was such a gamble. These guys don't screw around. And I'm not saying that we should in any way sit there and acquiesce or surrender to the Iranians. How bad of a look would that be at this point? But this is why prior presidents have not gone down this road. Nobody wanted a new war in the Middle East. And let's be honest, that's what we've got right now. There is a new war in the Middle East. Anybody trying to tell you otherwise or just call it a conflict, I tell that to the families of the 17 dead U.S. service members, that it's just a little minor skirmish or a conflict. That's not what this is. Now, the president was coming back from the World Cup yesterday. We'll get to that here on KCMO. But here's part of what he had to say as the war with Iran continues to escalate.
Well, you keep hitting me. This is a far bigger job that we're doing. We were doing a little job of stopping them from having a certain capability. Now we're just ending it. So it's really not the same thing. What we're doing now is we're ending any chance where they could have a nuclear missile. If you look at it, after a week and a half, not 4 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks, we stopped them from probably, but I don't want to have the word probably. Thank you very much.
All right, so he's saying it's a bigger job now. We don't want to have Iran in a situation where they're probably unable to develop a nuclear weapon. We want to have Iran in a situation where they're absolutely never able to develop a nuclear weapon. Well, what is that going to take? Is that Iraq 2.0? Are there going to have to be some kind of boots on the ground to make sure that Iran is never in a place to develop a nuclear weapon? It might be the case. Now, I personally want absolutely no part of that. I don't. But I also understand that, when they are killing our service members, you can't have them dying in vain. You cannot put them and their families in a situation where they're now wondering what the heck was the point of this. And by the way, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Americans wondering that very same thing as well. So as we monitor now another night of strikes in Iran, of course, if anybody speaks from the White House or otherwise, we'll have you covered. We'll get you updated here on KCMO Talk Radio as we started off on a Monday morning in sweltering Kansas City. I am not in town. Like I said, I had to visit with O'Reilly over the weekend, so we're spending some time with family here. But I got to be honest, that heat, when I heard the forecast from Luke Doris, I was like, well, I guess my timing was not the worst, but that's just luck of the draw. Coming up, speaking of bad timing and the heat, the Streetcar over the weekend had a major problem. And this is exactly why the idea of this thing being some kind of form of mass transit or even considering the concept of it going to the airport is absolutely laughable. And I'm not the only one saying it in Kansas City. If you think it's just me, it's not. There are people who probably disagree with me on 9 out of 10 issues who will admit this is in no way the mass transportation growth idea for Kansas City. We'll tell you who's on board with that, what happened over the weekend. Mark Alford will be here, by the way, at 6:35 in 20 minutes on KCMO.
The fun's not done after Mundo in the Morning. Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Join me for Uncanceled at 10 o'clock right here on KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, the KC Streetcar is back in service this morning. This came through. It was last night at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening that the streetcar got back on after it was downed. Oh, I'm looking at the original post here. It was about 7 o'clock on Saturday night when the streetcar posted that service between Riverfront and Union Station is suspended due to an incident near 16th and Main. Now, service between Union Station and UMKC was still operating every 10 to 12 minutes, but it was obviously going north of Union Station to River Market. That was not working. And then last night, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it gets back up and operational. So it took them almost 24 hours to get this thing back up and running. So what happened? Well, here's the weird part to me. No one is saying, even Tom Gerend, who is, the head of the streetcar, executive director, he was kind of playing this whole thing close to the vest. There were a lot of people speculating as to what happened. And Tom wrote, there was no collision. The team is investigating a portion of the track slab in the crossroads after a report of some rail movement. What I saw on social media is that the track was buckling, basically, because of the heat.
That's what I saw on TV, too.
Yeah, but it's weird that
out of the ground, protruding, if you will.
Yeah. But it's weird that nobody was just reporting that's what it was. It's like everyone's kind of playing this, well, we're not totally sure. We're waiting for the official word. No, it looks like the rail, to your point, John, was protruding out of the ground,
well,
right?
They mentioned they repaired the concrete slab, and I'm like, yeah, but I think you'd want to hammer that down or something.
Yes. It looked like it was obviously a rail that buckled under heat, or I don't know what exactly, but it was not a good look for the streetcar, and now they're not really being honest with what exactly happened here, despite the fact that everyone's looking at the same photos and videos. It's like, guys, just tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if certain places and seams the ground isn't buckling underneath them, potentially, may not be so much the rail, maybe the ground underneath it.
Either way, it comes back to the point of this thing is not reliable mass transit for Kansas City. It's not. It never will be, and it never has been. I found this story from the Kansas City Star going back to 2023. Here was the headline, July 14th of 2023, almost 3 years ago to the date. Here was the headline in the Kansas City Star. Heat puts KC streetcar out of service for weeks. Are rails vulnerable to climate change? Because, of course.
Oh, I see.
Woo!
Yes. This was dug up, like I said, 3 years ago. Crews are nearing the halfway point in making track repairs to the streetcar rail that buckled in the heat on 4th of July, but it will be another week or two until service is resumed. And, of course, the Star, instead of saying, hey, does it make sense to spend billions of dollars on a few miles of streetcar? Does that make sense for Kansas City? Or is this kind of just an antiquated way to get people around town that isn't really worth the money, even if we're getting federal money to do it? Is this just something that we should be looking at from a much different perspective? Instead, their angle is, wow, this is by climate change, and if only we didn't have climate change, we could have nice things like streetcars, John.
The story is not, this is your tax dollars not at work. The story is climate change.
Exactly. And that's 3 years ago. So I'm just waiting for the Star to basically republish that same story from July of 2023. We'll see if they do it. They may tweak some things, take a quote here or there and twist it around. But it's unbelievable. They have a quote here from a professor at Portland State because, of course, they had to go to Portland, Oregon to find a professor to give them their quote. And this guy told the Star 3 years ago, this definitely isn't the first or last time that we'll be seeing infrastructure buckled to extreme heat or many other climate-induced experiences. Unbelievable. We must shut down the idea of a streetcar ever going to the airport. That would be such a waste of time and resources and money, okay? And I got to give credit to this guy, Kevin Collison. He does a solid job. City Scene KC is who he's a part of. He was on Kansas City Weekend Review over the weekend on PBS, and they were talking about the streetcar and Mayor Q wanting to go up to the airport. And here is part of what he had to say over the weekend.
No more conversations about Streetcar until we figure out a way to pay for it. Everybody keeps throwing out ideas. Quentin is the latest, and number two, Streetcar is not the way to go to the airport if the billions of dollars were raised. We've got to figure out as a community how to pay our local share, and that's assuming there's a federal government that's going to be ready to match what we did. But how they built our streetcar currently is not going to work, going east-west, going up to the airport, going to North Kansas City. Quentin, if he really wants to leave a legacy, he should start the heavy lifting of trying to assemble the kind of public effort to come up with a local matching source.
That was Kevin Collison, City Scene KC, on Weekend Review this past weekend, and it was fantastic commentary. He's right. The streetcar to go from Union Station down to UMKC cost $100 million per mile. Downtown to the airport, as John always jokes, is a short flight, or it's 20 miles. So on $100 million a mile, you're looking at a $2 billion project to take a streetcar up to the airport, which would take, 2 to 3 times as long as an Uber, easily, with the way that thing trots along. And then on top of that, you'd have a situation where the darn thing would buckle under the July heat, and then it can't even get you to the airport. It is an awful idea that should have 0 legs in Kansas City and should be laughed at by anybody who proposes it.
How are you going to get to the airport when these guys are going to need to take their breaks when they get on the Union, right?
Well, that's the other thing, too, right? These guys
Ding.
These guys got to take a pee break every 10 minutes, I guess, if they get their way as members of the Teamsters Union. Ding, 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 ding. Very nice. Well done. As we kick it off on a Monday morning here on KCMO. We're going to get to Mark Alford here coming up, Missouri Congressman. He is, from what I understand, on the way to the airport, but I want to get his perspective on the update on Iran. Is there anything to come out of the president's speech last week that is actual tangible things they can do in Congress? That and more with Mark Alford next.
from the nation's heartland. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Happy to be here on a Monday morning across Kansas City. Mark Alford, Missouri's 4th Congressional District Congressman, is joining us on KCMO Talk Radio. Mark, before we get to some of the D.C. stuff, I want to ask you, as a congressman who does plenty of traveling to and from KCI to Reagan and Dulles and all around the country and the world for that matter, does it make any sense for you to piggyback off of the last part of this conversation on KCMO to extend the Kansas City streetcar from downtown up to the airport?
I think absolutely not. I don't think the federal dollars would be there. I like the idea, the local government's putting in more money. But no, I just drove 435. It's beautiful. I mean, I got here in 42 minutes from Lake Winnebago. I'm sitting in my car on the 4th floor of this beautiful monstrosity of a parking garage, talking to Pete Mundo, and I think we're doing pretty good when it comes to getting people to and from the airport.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a great parking garage right there. You can get to your gate in 15 minutes if you got TSA pre-check or less, depending on what you got to do. So there's a fine setup in place. Well, take me through. I believe you're heading back to D.C. Coming off of the president's speech last week, Congressman, what realistically can come out of that speech based on the agenda the president has, specifically as it relates to stronger voter ID laws and trying to get that through at the federal level?
Well, look, two things came out of that speech that I really took from that. Number one, he is not looking in the rearview mirror necessarily and saying, hey, we've got to make sure because the election was stolen. Those words never came out of his mouth. He is reiterating the vulnerabilities, the dire straits that we're in now with foreign governments who are able to access our voter machines and possibly disrupt future elections. If we cannot make sure that our voters are protected, why even have elections? And that's why the Save America Act is so important. You saw also the information that was released on the whitehouse.gov that over 100,000 non-citizens were registered in Missouri alone, and that's just one of 4 states that they were able to get the information. We are going to introduce on the Reconciliation 3 package. It gets in a little bit into the weeds, but part of that is going to be a watered-down version of the Save America Act, where we will give carrots or incentives, money, if you will, to states that enforce election integrity, ID at the polls. We already have that in Missouri. It's these blue states that don't want to enforce it because they do want non-citizens voting. They're not going to take this money. I think this is window dressing. It's watered down. The Senate needs to do their job and pass the full bill that we have sent over there 3 freaking times. Voter IDs at the poll and register to vote, proving that you're a U.S. citizen to begin with.
So this idea, and you can probably put this in layman's terms better than me, but the idea of kind of putting voter ID, incentivizing, to your point, states, blue states in particular, to have, let's say, photo ID in their elections in the House as part of a broader reconciliation bill sounds to me like it's a non-starter on the House side, because how much money would you have to offer Gavin Newsom in California to have photo ID? I mean, $1 trillion? What's it realistically going to take? And I don't think they would take it anyway. So is it just a non-starter because it's not realistic, or because the House actually wouldn't pass something like that?
If it's in there, it's going to pass. My point is, I don't know what good it's going to do. And at this point, the House has passed the SAVE Act or Save America Act, 2 different versions, 3 times now. The Senate, as you know, the world knows that the Senate is refusing to do its job to get this passed. There's nothing we can do about that. Unfortunately, I think that's up to John Thune and some of these knucklehead senators who don't want election integrity. My point is, if you give the states the money, as you said, they're not going to take the money. They would, I think, what would rather be, instead of a carrot, we need to use a stick. I remember back during the oil embargo from the Arab states back in the 70s, and Jimmy Carter to force the states to lower the speed limit to 55 across the nation. They just threatened to take away highway funding. Let's threaten to make it hurt for these states who don't want to protect our elections.
Mark Alford, Missouri Congressman, 4th Congressional District, is joining us here on KCMO Talk Radio. Okay, so Iran, obviously, 3 more service members over the weekend die. The attacks continue from the United States against Iran. Have the goals shifted now in terms of what is a win coming out of this conflict, war, however you want to describe and explain it? And if so, what does the mission need to be right now, and what does the goal need to be right now?
Well, first off, my sincere condolences and appreciation for those servicemen and women who gave their lives to make sure we never have a nuclear weapon in Iran. That is so important. I think these men and women realize that goal. The goal has not changed, Pete, from the very outset. Number one, to make sure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. If we give up now, if we walk away from this without making sure that happens as a primary goal, then we will have lost. And we will never, I think there will never be a president again to step in to make sure that this happens. We had them on the ropes 2 months ago. I am sorry that we let off the pressure. We should have finished the job then, but President Trump wanted to give peace a chance. These knuckleheads don't know what truth is. They don't know what a memorandum of understanding means. They don't know what an agreement means to begin with, because they're going to do everything they can to circumvent any negotiations and to keep on doing what they've done for 47 years, and that is to be a bully of the world and the largest sponsor of state terrorism. We've got to make sure that they can't export that terrorism. Their ballistic missile capabilities are depleted, as we've seen, or decimated. They just proved us right over the weekend, sending a ballistic missile to a foreign nation and blowing up and killing some of our service members in a friendly country like Jordan that we use their airstrip there, CENTCOM does. And I've been there 2 years ago. It doesn't make sense to let them off the ropes now. And I understand it's taking sacrifice. It's taking lives. It's taking treasure. We are meeting with Pete Hegseth tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at the Pentagon to hear more about the replenishment needs for our military. And that's another thing we're going to be doing under reconciliation. The Democrats are never going to vote for more money for our military for this operation because they want us to lose. And that is an unfortunate reality in today's political world.
What exactly will a win look like in this situation when all is said and done?
I think not recapturing necessarily, but control of the 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium that's buried 300 feet under a mountain, thanks to our B-2 stealth bombers from Whiteman Air Force Base some 14 months ago or 13 months ago. I think it's going to take regime change, Pete. No one wants to say that. And the president has said that we have had some regime change, but it's getting these Ayatollah knuckleheads out of power. And whether it's a relative of the Shah that once was there, his son who's back in power, whatever the people decide needs to lead them, other than a theocratic nut job who wants to blow up the world.
Mark Alford is here on KCMO Talk Radio. Always appreciate his time. All right, so Congressman, what about, all these races happening? Obviously, you're kind of coasting through primary season here. But with the redistricting, with the 5th Congressional District race obviously now having more intrigue on the GOP side, you've got the replacement of Sam Graves up north, obviously that race hot and heavy as well. How much are you wading into some of these races, and what are you expecting here these next couple of weeks?
Well, yeah, let's review. So the 5th Congressional District, Emanuel Cleaver's district, the one he now represents, is being divided into 3 portions. North of the river goes into this new 6th. Whoever wins the 4th, I'm hoping I do, will inherit much of the Kansas City Central Business District, the Plaza, Crown Center, Lee Summit. And then the new 5th would be everything east, basically, of 71 Highway going over towards Columbia. This significantly reduces our Republican stronghold. It's going to be a much more difficult fight. We are campaigning hard in the primary. I have 2 primary opponents, and then we have 3 or 4 Democrat opponents who I'm not going to mention their names, but they're not, a couple of them are pretty serious contenders. And so we are fighting hard. Now, when it comes to the new 5th, You have two Republicans who are friends of mine who ran against me 4 years ago, and I beat them, Taylor Burks out of Columbia and Senator Rick Bratton out of Cass County. I'm staying out of that race. I'm advising them equally about what happens when you get to Congress. And I'm also staying out of the 6th Congressional District, even though Chris DeGaulle is a very good close friend of mine. Nathan Willett is a city councilman, as you know, and that is a tough race. Things are getting very nasty. There's a lot of outside money coming into these races. I started watching some of the local TV yesterday, and I couldn't believe some of the commercials that are on now. And I think the 5th race is going to get even tougher. If the Democrats decide that they think they can hold on to this seat somehow and keep Emmanuel Cleaver in that seat, you could see a lot of money starting to be dumped into that race.
It's going to be very interesting to watch unfold. Mark Alford, safe travels, Congressman, to Washington, D.C. We'd love to catch up again and see how things go with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth tomorrow. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Pete.
You bet. Congressman Mark Alford on KCMO Talk Radio on a Monday morning in Kansas City. Coming up, our top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. We call it the 6 at 6 next.
From Overland Park to Parkville, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
It is 6:50 on a Monday morning across Kansas City, and it's the time of the morning when we give you the top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. Let's roll it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Well, the Chiefs have selected their partner to oversee planning and construction of a $300 million team headquarters and practice facility in Olathe that will be off of K10 and Ridgeview. The Chiefs announced late last week that Burns & McDonnell, of course, right here in Kansas City, headquartered, would serve as the owner's representative for that new practice facility, which is slated to open up ahead of the 2031 season in conjunction with the $3 billion domed stadium in Wyandotte County. So the Chiefs say that they are extremely excited to enlist Burns & McDonnell, which will be responsible for ensuring the project remains on schedule, within budget, and aligned with the owner's goals. So that is going to be happening on the 155 acres of land near the intersection of College and Ridgeview Road in Olathe. So that's where that's going to be taking place, and we'll see how things go with the stadium selection process as well. Now, I believe what we're looking at here when it comes to that practice facility is quite an operation, pushing $2 billion. And that'll be up to $975 million of surrounding development through the Star Bond program. So there we go. We'll see how all that plays out in Olathe. Next up.
Number 2.
Tragedy in Prairie Village. A 5th grader from Prairie Village has died just days after she and her family were involved in a crash driving to Nashville. Annie Coaster, a student at St. Anne Catholic School, died from injuries she sustained in a crash last Wednesday. She was placed on life support and died late on Saturday night. According to a GoFundMe page, Annie and her family were driving to Nashville for a soccer tournament when the crash took place. Where and what caused the crash is still unknown, but in the wake of her passing, leaders at St. Anne Catholic Church issued a statement on social media expressing their grief and extending their condolences to the family. So 5th grader Annie Coaster dying, and it is a tragic situation, family going once again to a soccer tournament in Nashville, Tennessee. The donation page has reached more than $50,000 in donations on the GoFundMe. Next up in our 6 at 6.
Number 3.
Well, we go to this, another sad story here, but 4 hurt in a shooting in a Kansas City park. Police are responding to what they call a suspicious activity call. 4 people hurt. The shooting at MLK Jr. Park early on Sunday morning. Police were dispatched to MLK Jr. Boulevard and Woodland Avenue at 12:30 in the morning on reports of suspicious activity involving 50 or more juveniles. As officers showed up, they heard gunshots. Officers located an adult female with gunshot wounds. She was taken to the hospital. 2 additional victims arrived at area hospitals, and a 4th victim drove himself to a police station. All 4 victims have non-life-threatening injuries, thank goodness. They were identified as an adult female, an adult male, a juvenile female over 16, and a juvenile male over 16. KCPD saying there's no suspect information at this time. We keep it rolling in our 6 at 6.
Number 4.
With some happy news, JD and Usha Vance welcome a baby boy over the weekend, the first child born to a sitting VP in more than 150 years. Congratulations, their 4th child. Alec Neil Vance joins older siblings Ewan, Vivek, and Mirabelle. So a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and now a newborn. Statement reading over the weekend, we are excited to announce that our baby boy was born this morning. Usha and the baby are happy and healthy, and our kids are overjoyed to meet their little brother. They thank doctors and staff at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center and the White House medical team as well. So congratulations to the vice president, who is now 41. Usha is 40. And, of course, the 3 older siblings as well. The last time a sitting VP became a new father was in the 1800s. How about that? It was Schuyler Colfax and his second wife had a son in 1870 when Colfax was serving as the vice president of the United States. So it's been a minute. Congratulations to the Vance family. Next up.
Number 5.
There you go. Thank you very much. All right. The latest in Iran, 3 service members died over the weekend, 2 in Jordan, 1 in Iraq. And the one in Iraq was during a controlled detonation of a downed Iranian drone. As a result, the U.S. has conducted a new round of airstrikes early this morning targeting Iran after announcing the death of another American service member. That takes the number of dead U.S. service members in this war, which we have to call it at this point, to 17. So this was another night of attacks from the United States at Iran. Oil prices now hitting $82 a barrel, and obviously keeping a close eye on where all this leads as we roll through it here on KCMO. And last up in our 6 at 6.
Number 6.
Well, we'll go to the World Cup, where it was Spain beating Argentina. 1-0 yesterday. Exciting, if you like those defensive-oriented kind of games between these two sides. And that's exactly what you got in that World Cup final at MetLife Stadium yesterday in New Jersey. Spain is your World Cup winner. I do have to get to John and Mark's reaction to all that. I thought it was kind of a boring game, but once again, I'm not the diehard soccer guy, so we'll do all that and more coming up in the 7 o'clock hour right here on KCMO Talk Radio on a Monday morning, 95.7 FM in Kansas City. So the Chiefs are going ahead with Burns and McDonnell as the individuals who are going to help them build that $300 million headquarters that they're going to have there in Olathe. So I'm glad they're going local. Listen, Burns and Mac, not that it's a charity operation, obviously. It's one of the most powerful companies in Kansas City. But remember, there was all that drama with the airport. Remember that, on whether or not it was going to be the local folks who were going to get the jobs and the construction and whatnot. And as I recall with the airport, they ended up going out of town. So the Chiefs, from a pure PR perspective, made the right call last week with Burns and McDonnell, announcing that that's going to be the partner to oversee the $300 million team headquarters and practice facility in Olathe. So that's welcome news. That's the right move for the Chiefs. I won't give them a hard time over that, regardless of what I think of the project and the Star Bonds in general. They're doing the right thing going local. The last thing that the Chiefs needed to deal with was selecting some out-of-town developer to oversee the project, as they get the most generous sports subsidy deal in the history of sports subsidy deals in America. The last thing they had to do was pick somebody out of Texas or Tennessee or California or New York. So they did and this is like PR 101. This is not rocket science. You pick the local firm, okay? You pick the people that are right here in Kansas City. That's what you do to try to win a little bit of goodwill back. I'm not saying it changes my thoughts on the project in general. This practice facility is going to go there at K10 in Ridgeview on about 155 acres. We still don't know what exactly the project's going to entail. We know it's going to be, obviously, a practice facility. It will be, team headquarters. There will likely be apartments and restaurants. I mean, it's a big plot of land if you go out there off of K10 and drive down. Now, right now, there are cows and just, ranching happening on that piece of property. But it's not a great piece of property from a development standpoint. And that's where the city of Olathe, listen, the family has a right to obviously sell the property. And right now, if you drive by that property, like I said, there's cows on the property. But it's not a super desirable piece of property because of how the property runs.
It's really
it drops off. It's very hilly, Mark. It drops off significantly once you start going west on the property towards the Gary Haller Trail down there, which obviously snakes through a bunch of Johnson County. And a lot of it, I think, is honestly kind of unusable. Unless you're going to reconstruct the entire way the land is leveled out, then it's hilly, to your point, Mark. It drops off on the west side of the property. Like, I would say at least a third of the west side of that property where the Chiefs are putting the practice facility is more or less unusable because of how it just completely drops off from where Ridgeview Road is in Olathe. So I don't know if they're going to keep a lot of that brush and wildlife back there. I mean, listen, as someone who runs the Gary Haller Trail, I hope that they will. And I'm not going to be, staring up at every apartment complex known to mankind that they're going to try to jump in there and put up there in Olathe. But hey, that's the way of the world, it seems like these days. But it's not a highly desirable piece of property because of how it's laid out. So we'll obviously keep an eye on that and see how it plays out, but it needed a very unique tenant to want to develop that land. And that's why it seems like this may end up being a good fit. Now, does it mean that the city of Olathe has done a great job? The state of Kansas obviously sold with the Star Bonds. No, I mean, I'm not complimenting any of them, but I will be intrigued to see what Burns and McDonnell does exactly with how they're going to set this thing up. If I'm guessing, if you know that plot of land, and if not, once again, you can drive by whenever you want. My guess would be the bulk of the construction is going to be on the north side of that piece of property, up against the Garmin soccer complex and everything else that's going on over there, because that is the most level part of that property. Mark, would you agree on that based on how the land is laid out over there?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. That's what makes the most sense to me. You also have the best ingress egress. The further you get down towards College Boulevard, the worse the property land and the property gets. So I don't think there will be as much on the south side. That's just me spitballing based on how I see that land laying out. But Burns and Mack is going to obviously run it. Good on them. Now we'll see what exactly the plans are going forward. It still is amazing to me that this money was given away, but the Star Bond was set up through the city and, of course, the state without anyone really knowing what the plans are. I mean, there's like loose plans, but no one has the nitty-gritty exactly on what these plans are going to be. So we still have to wait to see what exactly that's going to look like from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Allegedly, by football season, they are going to have a plan in the next month or so.
Is that what they're saying for the practice facility itself?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hold them to it. So what comes first, the practice facility blueprint or Mahomes playing a snap?
Ooh, that's a good one. Tough.
Okay.
We'll take the practice facility.
Okay, John. Mm-hmm. All right. John's going to say practice facility before plans for or before Mahomes comes back and plays a snap. How about that? Mark, you got to go the other way.
I'll go the other way, but just because I think that he'll play in training camp.
Okay. All right. Fine. Fair enough.
No.
Well, that's something that we're going to. Yeah, no, I agree with you. No preseason at all. No way, no how. Now, speaking of sports, yesterday, World Cup, obviously, Spain ends up beating Argentina by a score of 1-0, the only goal coming in extra time. Here's the post that I shared yesterday, and it came from our guy, Rich Lowry. And I don't think that Mark and John are going to like this post as diehard soccer guys, but I got to hand it to Rich Lowry because I thought he put it very well, okay, as it relates to soccer and just, why this sport, as amazing as it can be, doesn't always resonate here in the United States. Rich Lowry writes, and he's friend of the show, editor at the National Review. Rich Lowry writes here, quote, "I know countless millions of people love soccer, and it can be a thrilling game, as we witnessed repeatedly during the World Cup. But it suffers from a fundamental structural flaw. Because offense is in such short supply at this level, scoring is highly dependent on penalties. This means that scoring often comes outside the normal flow of play and incentivizes flopping and pretend injuries that are unworthy of grown men. You think someone rolling around the turf in agonizing pain is going to have to be transported immediately to the hospital, then you look up and he's played another 45 minutes, no problem. Then there's the courting of artificial penalties. A player steps in front of another, gets bumped, proceeds to pretend he got shot. Whatever the other merits of soccer, this stuff is a blight on the game and brings an element of low comedy to even the highest stakes competition." That is perfectly summarized by Rich Lowry on why, as much as I love soccer, just from the standpoint of watching at least kids play it, coaching at low levels, and enjoy watching the World Cup, that was my takeaway, especially watching the finals yesterday. Fellas, tell me where that's wrong.
Game 3, the day before, a 10-goal game, England against France, 6-4 final. He's wrong in the sense that was a boring game. It was a crap game. The only people that liked it are Spain, period. So that is what's wrong with soccer from an American standpoint. They would have loved the Game 3 that was the day before with 10 goals. We like the scoring and things, but I don't think his point, crap teams go for the penalties that don't have an offense. So there are a lot of teams that have offenses that play throughout Europe, and you see better games than what we saw as the final game.
Tell me this. That third game, you're right, it was a 6-4 score.
Mm-hmm.
Was that, though, and I don't have the best eye for it, but that felt a little bit to me like the NFL Pro Bowl where just no one's playing defense because no one wants to get hurt. Or like the NBA All-Star game. Is there an element to that going on?
Yeah, nobody wanted to be there. I'll go for that at that point, but I didn't expect to see 10 goals. And so when it opens up 4-0 England, you're thinking, yeah, boy, France sure doesn't want to be here. But then they mount a comeback. All of a sudden it's 4-3. And, even as a neutral fan, as they call it, you're on the edge of your seat going, all right, what's going to happen? So, but
That's
that
good.
is
That's
a
fair.
rarity. That is a rarity. So the more
Yeah.
games are like the final, to Rich Lowry's point and your point, I will say. But that was a
That's
crap game.
Yeah, yeah. I was rooting for Argentina. I really was yesterday, and mostly because Spain's a bunch of freeloaders when it comes to NATO. And I said that to my daughters yesterday. They said, "Who are you rooting for?" I said, "Argentina." They said, "Why?" I said, "Because Spain is a bunch of freeloaders on the world stage." And that opened up a whole can of worms of like 20 questions that I really couldn't figure out how to answer to a 7 and a 5-year-old, but I did my best. And I did my best because the game wasn't worth watching anyway. So, that's what I was doing. Mark?
I will say that they this World Cup specifically, they added the factor that if you flop, they're going to give you a yellow card. So they are trying to clean that up a little bit. I'll give them that.
Good. I'm glad you brought that up. That is a commendable thing for FIFA and the World Cup to start doing, okay? Because you're right. I mean, some of these things. And then yesterday, the offsides where they removed that Spain goal. I know this stuff is like, comes down to inches. But I couldn't get a feel on that being offsides or not.
Dude, reffing it's like the strike zone in the MLB. It's like traveling in the NBA. Some of this stuff,
Yeah.
you shake your head, slap your forehead, going, "What are you thinking?"
Okay. Well, I'm glad it wasn't just me.
No, not just you,
because
sir.
I'm trying to get a read for this as someone who's a very novice professional soccer watcher, and I'm just watching it with my own two eyes, being like, "Really?"
There's some classic poor reffing in this tournament for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, we're on the same page there. But hey, World Cup over. It was exciting for it to be in America. And I will say it brought a level of interest, I think, not just here in the States, but on the world stage that might behoove FIFA to bring it back here sooner rather than later. The Women's World Cup is going to be here in 2031, and we'll find out, I think it's next year is what the mayor said, whether or not the World Cup will come to Kansas City for the women in 5 years. That would be, of course, a lot of fun. Now, you know what else is a lot of fun? You've got people coming over to the house. You're hanging out outdoors. Maybe not this past weekend with all the heat, but it's something we're all doing during the summer, cookouts and whatnot. But if you're someone who is looking at your siding and your windows and you're like, you know what, now's the time. I've been dragging my feet on getting new windows, getting new siding. CMP Construction here in Kansas City can help with those projects as well, in addition to the bathroom and the kitchen and the basement remodel. But if you want to get those projects done, the siding and the windows, now's the time to call because they can't do them, obviously, during the winter, and there's anywhere from a 10 to 12-week lead time on getting those projects all wrapped up and finished. So make the call now. CMP Construction's family-owned Kansas City company run by Chris and Teresa, and they're not a big corporate remodeler, okay? We've all had, or at least, I have had those big corporate remodelers in my house, and within 5 minutes, I regret it. I do. You're not getting that kind of experience with CMP Construction. You're getting local folks who are from Kansas City, know this town, and it's a family-like atmosphere. That's how they've had success for 25 years in Kansas City. And they're giving free estimates to KCMO Talk Radio listeners. That's not typically something that they do, but they're doing it for this audience because they're fans, they're listeners, and they support this radio station. So find them online and see all their work at cmpremodel.com. That's cmpremodel.com, and start the conversation today with CMP Construction.
from Smithville to Shawnee Mission. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
When I walked into Bill O'Reilly's home on Saturday, it's interesting. He had all these papers laid out on the table, and those papers were the morning updates. He was writing his newsletter for Sunday. He was rolling out some of his morning radio updates that he does here on KCMO and on radio stations around the country for the week ahead. And it was very old school. There was no laptop. There was no sign of a computer. There was no phone for notes. It was just Bill at the table with about 20 different pieces of paper and a couple of notepads. And he said, "What do you got going on here?" And he said, "I'm writing my Sunday newsletter on BillO'Reilly.com and preparing the radio updates for the week ahead." And I was like, okay, very nice. But, how often do you see that? Certainly when I'm rolling out my notes, most of it now is digital, and it's just easier to share what I'm doing with John and Mark through Google Docs and things like that. I'll write some notes out, so I've got key phrases that I want to touch on and stories I want to touch on in front of me. But, you're not going to see that going forward, let's be honest.
Keatsman does a lot of that, actually.
Does he?
He writes a lot of notes for his show, yeah.
Well, you're right. I have seen Kevin's notepad, and it's very much all just transcribed through Kevin and a pen and a pad of paper. So that's a very good point there, Mark. Very good point. Keatsman does have the same approach with a lot of things written out on paper. Most of my ideas, listen, they come from Google Docs. John and Mark can see it. And then I've got a notepad where I'm kind of writing keywords and phrases that I want to spin off of when I'm doing some kind of a monologue or whatever it might be. But I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because Kevin does do that as well. But I will say, I just think part of that too is, for better or for worse, I think part of that is generational. But I think that those guys actually have it right. I think that the proof's in the pudding. You retain more when you write it down. That is indisputable. All right, the data's out there that you retain more when you are writing down notes versus just, say, typing notes or putting them on your phone or something like that. So that's true, and I hope we get back to more of that. Now, you can balance the technology, obviously, with what you do in terms of writing it down. But that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. Now, speaking of technology, I thought this was interesting. There's a big push, and we're going to talk to Steve Moore in just over 1 hour. He's a former economic advisor to President Trump. He's now with Unleashed Prosperity. His weekend show airs here on KCMO. He's great when it comes to economics and finances. But there's a big divide happening in, I would say, right of center conservative politics, where the Trump administration is very much pro-data center. But then you have, on the grassroots level, a lot of Republican voters not digging the data center, not wanting to be a part of the data center because they're afraid of what it's doing to their water bills, their electricity bills. I mean, we've had those debates right here in Kansas and Missouri. Phil Sarnicki, who's running for governor, he's out there right now saying that he would put a moratorium on data centers in Kansas. So that is a divide on the GOP side between the grassroots and what you're seeing in D.C. We'll get to more with Steve Moore on that. But a great idea for the colleges we'll talk about next.
Coming up at 10 o'clock, it's Uncanceled on KCMO Talk Radio, right after Pete Mundo and Mundo in the Morning.
This was a very underrated part of the big, beautiful bill that passed last year, and it looks like it now may start to come to fruition in the next or upcoming school year, which amazingly is just a few weeks away. It is 7:34. Good morning. Thanks for starting your week with us here on KCMO. And I first saw it over the weekend from NPR, of all places. Of course, they are distraught, right? They're not having any of this. But the Department of Education is rolling out a new accountability test for colleges and universities. Now, the test is relatively simple under this new federal rule. If an undergrad program's graduates do not earn more than workers who never went to college, the program could be cut off from federal student loans. Now, this is a complete no-brainer to me. There's some nuance here, which I think we'll talk about. But the days of sending kids to college, letting them get a degree in, multi-gender studies or basket weaving, and then ending up $100,000 or more in debt, and then having the schools indoctrinate them to the point of them being allowed to play the victim card and claiming that somehow they're getting screwed by the man, they're getting screwed by the system, they're getting screwed by the government that won't bail out their loans, when they willingly took out these loans for these completely useless degrees. Those days need to end, and the biggest beneficiaries will be these people who are getting fleeced indoctrinated by these colleges, John.
I'm fascinated by the emphasis on, I'll hear somebody say, I'm majoring in Russian literature with an emphasis on the 16 to 45 to 1700 period. I'm like, I majored in broadcasting with an emphasis on getting a job.
Yeah.
Right? That was it. So all these little emphases seem like they even more micro niche these classes for you to take and get sucked into these down this rabbit hole, if you will.
There's no doubt about it, all right? And, as someone who didn't even go to college for any of this broadcasting stuff, I guess here I am all these years later, which goes to show you.
Here you are killing it.
I mean, not that broadcasting degrees are not valuable. They are, and they definitely can be. But really, any degree is what you do with it. That's what it comes down to. But there are certain degrees, accounting, nursing, engineering, that those jobs are going to lead you to, or those degrees are going to lead you to specific jobs. You know that there are just certain jobs that are not going to lead you to a place, to use your point, Russian literature between 1650 and 1750, that will land you nowhere. But here's where they all go. They then go to get a master's degree, then they go to get a PhD, then they go to get a college professorship job, where then they can kind of repeat the whole cycle, and they can try to get other kids involved in these studies that do nothing for the private sector, nothing for the real world, but create more people who then want to blame society for why they have $100,000 in debt with a degree that they can't do anything with. So the U.S. Department of Education is rolling this out this month. It's happening ahead of universities opening up here in a few weeks. And there are some people who are pushing back and saying, well, what about becoming a teacher, right? You got to go to college to be a teacher, but teachers will not necessarily always make more than, say, a plumber or an electrician who doesn't go to college. That's not really what's going on here. To show you the nuance of what this program's about, earnings is a piece of the puzzle. That's what's really happening here. So the new earnings test comes courtesy of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed last year. Higher education experts across the political spectrum told NPR that test sets a pretty reasonable expectation. So what it really says is that in many states, federal data shows graduates of a bachelor's program will have to earn a minimum of $30,000 to $40,000 a year for their program to pass the federal standards. That's a pretty low floor. They're not sitting here saying that you've got to make $50,000 your day out of college, and if you don't make that with your degree is going to go away from receiving federal student loans. they're setting a floor that is relatively reasonable. And let's be honest, if there's a degree that's only making you $15,000 to $20,000 a year, but is costing students $75,000 to $100,000 to get said degree, then I think the federal government owes it to its citizens to not offer federal loans for that degree. If you want to go get a private loan, you can go do that on your own time, right? You can find a bank, see if they'll loan you $100,000 for your basket weaving degree, and you're probably going to have a very high interest rate. It's a high-risk loan. Maybe the bank wants to offer it to you, but the idea that the federal government should offer you a low-interest loan for you to get a degree in something that is really not in any way additive to the society at large is such a waste of money. And you know what it also does? It artificially inflates the cost of that degree. If your local colleges actually start stacking up degrees and they actually start pricing some of these majors based on what you can make on the back end, like let's say an accounting degree costs you, just to use a round number, let's say that costs $100,000, but the basket weaving degree costs $20,000. Then all of a sudden, all right, you might be able to make the case on either side of that. But every degree, obviously, tuition's the same for colleges for the most part based on regardless of what you study. It's just they put together a tuition cost, and then what you choose to study is up to you. I think that's the future of colleges. If these colleges want to wise up, they will actually price their majors based on what the ROI is for some of these degrees. They don't do that right now. Now, of course, NPR is not happy about this, by the way. Not at all. So here's how NPR is framing some of this. All right? NPR notes here. They worry this new test that the federal government's going to roll out as to whether or not you can get federal student loans for certain worthless college degrees. They worry the new test might lead colleges and universities to preemptively slash low-earning creative arts programs in music, theater, studio art, and design. And they say that that could lead to a further devaluing of jobs that are critical to a well-functioning society. Oh, please. Spare me. I mean, spare me. There's a quote here. We know we need nurses. We know we need journalists. We know we need early childhood educators. We don't know how many artists we need. But I can guarantee that if you eliminate access, we will impoverish our cultural life nationally. What are we going to do without the artists? Based on some of the graffiti I see around town, I'm pretty sure we've got plenty of artists. And I'm in no way convinced that they need to go to college, by the way, and spend a lot of money and take out debt to learn what they learn to be a good artist. And you know what would happen in a free marketplace if we suddenly find ourselves impoverished of artists and cultural life? The free market will solve that because people inherently want to be in that space. It's a high demand space, or I should say it's a high supply space. The problem is there's low demand when it comes to actual jobs that pay you something. That's the problem. So the marketplace will take care of it, but saying we've got to continue to federally fund and subsidize, in part, arts degrees in universities because it's an important part of our cultural life, based on what? Where's the data to back that up? But it's never about the data. It's about the feels. It's about the vibes. And that's really all in large part that they end up doing well. All right, that's it. So this is getting rolled out this upcoming year, courtesy of the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's one of those things in the bill that really didn't get a lot of attention, but now it's going to have a major impact on, I think, colleges and universities all across the country. And they're going to think twice about offering up some of these degrees, which just turn kids into perpetual victims after they graduate college. And I think leads to a lot of the indoctrination that we see with young people across the board. 913-408 888-937-9577 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM in Kansas City, 102.9 FM in Topeka as we enter year 5 of that Topeka partnership. It's great to have you here. The good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend is coming up next.
Vince Colonnese here, and I'm coming up at 11 after Kevin Keatsman on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Happy Monday. Thanks for starting the week here in Kansas City with us on KCMO Talk Radio. It is that time of the week. Let's roll it.
It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
All right. Let's start with the good, and that is the visit with Bill O'Reilly. We had a nice meeting on Saturday, spent about an hour and a half together, and the biggest thing that Bill wanted to pass along to you in this audience is that he loves being on KCMO Talk Radio, whether it's his morning update at 7:15 every single day, whether it's the guest appearances on this show. He genuinely appreciates what Kansas City has done for him, and whether it's, news of the day, the latest book. He's got the new one coming out this fall, Confronting America. He wanted to give me a copy on the way out the door, and he's going through this closet of his that's like right inside of his front door. And it's funny, he's got all the books, all these books on this top shelf in this little side closet he's got, Killing the Legends, Killing the Killers, all of them. And there's probably half a dozen of each, but he couldn't find any copies of Confronting America, which is the new book coming out. And he was like, I thought I had these somewhere in here. He just couldn't find them. So he said he'd send one in the mail before it comes out in September. But, of course, he'll be back on long before then. But he also wanted to share that, what we have on KCMO, what Kansas City has is unique, because he talked about a lot of the supposed bigger markets, the Chicagos, the LAs, the Houstons of the world. They just don't have the local/national talk radio scene and brand that Bill believes we built here in Kansas City on KCMO. And that is a testament to you in this audience. And yes, I did try to twist his arm to get him out here to Kansas City for a game, but we'll see. He's a busy guy. He is really not slowed down. For a guy in his mid-70s, he is working, and he'll tell you, listen, he's not looking for sympathy at all, but he's working hard. He's got a lot of moving parts. He's got dozens of employees working for him as part of his operation between BillO'Reilly.com, the podcast, the books, everything else. So he's got a lot of moving parts. It was funny, too. His son's now working in the White House, and, he's a low-level, entry-level staffer. And he said, I just told my son, keep your head down and do not speak unless you are spoken to. And I thought, you know what? A lot of young people entering the labor force could use that advice, because too many of them just show up and seem to think they've got it all figured out. And Bill's like, nope, do not be that guy. And I was like, that's just good, solid advice. But, he was grateful for coming on this show. He was outstanding. We were sitting on his back porch overlooking the beautiful Atlantic Ocean, and he had a lot of nice things to say about, you and this audience and how this audience has reacted to him being a bigger part of this show. So I thank you for that. The bad from the weekend, boy, a tough week to beat Taco Bell, wouldn't you say? Tough week to beat Taco Bell. So there's a lot of moving parts on this story, but the latest here is that a Chicago man landed in the hospital after contracting the explosive diarrhea parasite cyclosporiasis from a popular Taco Bell menu item, and enduring a week-long of stomach-churning symptoms before doctors figured out what was wrong. Now, this guy, Alonzo Zaragoza, 46 years old, was rushed to the ER last Wednesday. And he said that for a week he had not slept more than an hour and a half straight because he had to run to the bathroom every 90 minutes. And it was tied to the cyclosporiasis, which is linked to tainted iceberg lettuce, which obviously is a staple at a place like Taco Bell. So he believes he got it from the fan favorite Chalupa Supreme. So that is what he believes he got his cyclosporiasis from. He got a Lux box at Taco Bell, and the only thing that had iceberg lettuce in it was the Chalupa Supreme. Now, I used to like Taco Bell about 10, 15 years ago. I have not had Taco Bell, Oh boy, I think it was Kate's 10-year high school reunion, which would have been 2015. I think that's the last time I had any Taco Bell. And I've actually got one right up the street from me, and I just have not seen the inside of that place ever. But if you're Taco Bell, you're having a rough go right now. Because I'm sure you guys have seen the memes. People are like, now I don't know. When I have diarrhea after eating Taco Bell, is it cyclosporiasis or is it just the Taco Bell?
Exactly.
What's going on here?
No one knows.
No one knows. And the memes are writing themselves. And, Taco Bell is just getting absolutely roasted because they service a lot of their lettuce from this Taylor Farms in California, which is believed to be where the cyclosporiasis has entered, the entire vegetable industry, specifically iceberg lettuce. So it is not a good time to be Taco Bell. Mark, I know you have made that joke many times, at least privately. I can't think of whether or not you made that joke on the air. But I think you're a big Taco Bell guy, as I recall, or are you not?
I was a Taco Bell guy, not so much with the kids anymore because they don't like it. So
They don't like it?
yeah, not big Taco Bell fans. So I haven't been in a little while, but occasionally I'll drive through when I have a late night or something, coming back from a concert or whatever.
John, Taco Bell man, up or down?
I've been there within the last week, but maybe the last time for a little while.
Okay. Yeah. So you dodged the bullet and you're not going to risk it again.
Well, these things creep on you, apparently, so I'm not sure I've dodged the bullet. I'm not going to mark myself safe on Facebook yet.
All right. Well, good idea to avoid the Taco Bells just for the time being because, man, it's not a good scene there right now. You got viral national stories about guys spending a week in the ER after eating a Chalupa Supreme. That's the last thing Taco Bell needs. The ugly from the weekend is what continues to unfold with Iran. 3 U.S. service members dying over the weekend as the war continues. The memorandum of understanding feels like at this point a lifetime ago. New airstrikes this morning after Iran announced the death of another American service member, and Iran fired missiles towards Jordan, which risks now widening the conflict into neighboring Israel. So, oil prices briefly rose over $90 a barrel. They were back around $82 a barrel when the show started this morning. Right now, sitting right there at about $82 a barrel right now. So we'll see. Stock futures are higher with the market set to open up in about 30 minutes, but a very tenuous time as the U.S.-Iran war continues to unfold. And let's be honest, there is no end in sight, and I don't think it bodes well for the GOP going into the primaries. Big news that we're watching this morning. We'll get into with our next guest coming up on KCMO. Well, as you know, and as we've hyped up the last several weeks, KCMO Talk Radio is now the exclusive Kansas City home of the Missouri Tigers. And today, to me, it's like the unofficial start of the college football season when Media Days takes place. So K-State and KU had Big 12 Media Days a couple of weeks ago. This week, SEC Media Days is underway, and we are happy to welcome on and say good morning to Cody Goodwin. He is down in Tampa, Florida. That's where 2026 SEC Media Days are taking place. The commissioner, Greg Sankey, is taking the podium right now. The Missouri Tigers are there today. Coach Drinkowicz is a couple hours away. Cody, good morning. What's the vibe at SEC Media Days this morning?
Well, good morning to you too, Pete. And it's exciting, man. It's Monday, so it's always kind of a slow burn to kind of get into the week. I think there's Oklahoma, Missouri, Kentucky, and Tennessee all talk today. But then a lot of the heavier hitters in the conference, like Alabama, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, those guys come a little bit later in the week. So it's kind of a nice day to break into SEC Media Days and really kick off what's going to be a pretty fun week.
So what about Coach Drinkowicz and just the general high-level expectations for him, this team this season? What's the vibe inside of the program as to what they should expected to do this fall?
Yeah, there's a level of excitement, right? Because we're talking SEC football, man. It just means more as the tagline for a reason. But I think there's also within the program itself a little bit of cautious optimism. That there's a lot of new pieces with this program, just what they've done in the transfer portal, bringing in some new recruits, some new guys that have been developing behind the scenes. So I think are going to get a lot of opportunities this year. But then you also look at the schedule and who they have to play, right? The schedule features 4 teams from last year's 12-team playoff that are also expected to be pretty good again. And that doesn't even include Texas, who I think is widely going to be, pegged as one of the best teams both in the SEC and in the country this season. So it's a lot of new excitement because there's going to be new faces, a lot of talent on this Missouri team. But, man, that schedule is going to be a gauntlet, man. So, a little bit of cautious optimism. They're excited to see what they have, and, Missouri's going to find themselves in some fistfights this season.
So you know that KCMO Talk Radio is not a sports talk station per se, so I like to keep this kind of high level, but give me one player for the casual Kansas City sports fan, the one player that's coming back that you think the casual sports fan should know about, and the one new face, whether it's a freshman recruit or a transfer portal guy, that the casual fan should know about, one of each.
Yeah, well, I'll give you 2 returners, and only because one of them is originally from Kansas City. I'm talking Caden Green, returning starting left tackle for Missouri. Lee Summit guy, actually went to Oklahoma initially, but then transferred to Mizzou, and he's been just an absolute stalwart on that offensive line. He actually played left guard when he first got there, kicked out to left tackle last season, and this is a guy that's got All-American potential and first-round NFL draft grades going into this upcoming season. So he's a guy that you're going to want to watch, Kansas City boy. The other name to know, I think, is the name that everybody knows. That's running back Ahmad Hardy. He set Missouri's single-season rushing record last season. He was an All-American. He was a finalist for the award that is given to the nation's best running back. Didn't end up winning the award, but to be a finalist is still nothing to snuff at. I know he suffered a pretty big injury this offseason, so we aren't quite sure exactly when he'll be back this season, but that's one of the best running backs in college football in Ahmad Hardy. So, like I said, a lot of talent on this Mizzou team. In terms of new faces, I got to go with the quarterback, right? Austin Simmons, he was a transfer from Ole Miss. He actually was the starter last season for an Ole Miss team that ultimately got to the national semifinals. So this is a guy that's got a lot of talent. This is a guy that has maybe a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because of, he ultimately got hurt last season and then lost his starting job. Now he transfers to Mizzou. He's going to be the starter this season. He's a left-handed quarterback who can make all kinds of crazy, amazing throws. He's quite the athlete, too. Originally went to college to play both football and baseball. Now he's all football in Columbia, and I know that this is the guy that Mizzou coach Eli Drinkwitz is very, very excited about.
So you mentioned Ahmad Hardy, of course, running back for Mizzou, best in the SEC, most people believe. He was shot in the upper leg at a concert earlier this spring. Is there anything in terms of what impact that's going to have on him this season as a player and what that looks like right now?
Yeah, so that the shooting happened in May. He was at home. He's originally from Mississippi. He was at home attending a concert, and it was one of those kind of wrong place, wrong time type of situations based on everything that we have been able to find out about the situation over this summer. But so far as we know, everything has been upbeat in terms of his recovery. So obviously Drinkwitz isn't going to let us be there, for specific recovery efforts, but he's back in Columbia. He had gone through a couple different surgeries. He has been attacking his rehab daily. He's still with the team on a very regular basis. And, we haven't actually gotten an update on him. We got a chance to talk to Drinkwitz this morning here in Tampa. He didn't give us an update on Hardy because he's saving that update for when he's at the main podium later this morning. So about an hour and a half or so, we're all going to be glued to our computers, waiting the latest Ahmad Hardy update. But my guess is that it will probably be good news, because if it wasn't good news, something tells me that we would have probably found that out already. So everything on the front that we know so far encouraging as far as Ahmad Hardy's return for Mizzou.
Cody Goodwin is here. He is in Tampa, Florida, where SEC Media Days start today. The Missouri Tigers will be at the podium. And, of course, we are now the home of Mizzou here in Kansas City. He's part of the coverage for Power Mizzou, joining us on KCMO. To tie in the news, the politics, and the sports, Cody, obviously a lot of eyes are going to be on this Protect College Sports Act, which right now the SEC and the Big Ten seem to not like that much. The Big 12 and the ACC seem to be more in favor of this Protect College Sports Act that is getting bipartisan support in the United States Senate. What have you heard from Mizzou, Coach Drinkwitz, and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, who's going to be speaking this morning on this issue, and what it means for college sports fans by and large?
Yeah, I think it's an effort from some of the other conferences and some of the college football leaders to just try and make it a little bit more of a level playing field. Because for those who may not be aware, when it comes to college football, we often refer to the conferences as Power Four conferences. And by that, we mean the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12. Really, it's kind of more of a Power Two with the Big Ten and the SEC. And the reason for that is honestly, it comes down to money. And so a big push for this College Sports Act is from a lot of other leaders from specifically the Big 12 and the ACC. And there are some proponents within the SEC and the Big Ten as well to just try and level the playing field a little bit, among so many other things. I know that the SEC has been staunchly against it. I know that they want to see either a lot of things tweaked before this bill ultimately gets passed, or just, scrap it altogether. And so, college football is a funny sport, Pete. It changes every single offseason, I'm sure, as you well know. And this is just kind of the latest rendition of it. That college sports leaders are having to turn to Congress is something that Eli Drinkwitz, maybe not the biggest fan of. We'll put it that way. He's probably got some stronger words, but I won't use them for him. I'll let him say that whenever he gets a chance. But it's interesting times in college football where the only constant is change.
Yeah, that's so true. Well said. Hey, Cody, thanks for checking in from Tampa. We appreciate the time as always, and we'll look forward to talking more as the season gets underway here in just a few weeks. Thanks so much.
Hey, as a Kansas City boy myself, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk some Mizzou football, and hoping we'll get to talk quite a bit this season if Mizzou performs pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Cody. Have a great day. We appreciate Cody Goodwin being here on KCMO, part of the Power Mizzou team down there in Tampa, Florida. So now that the World Cup's over, listen, I like soccer, but it's not football, okay? They can call it football. They can misspell it all they want, but it's not football. Now we get to talk about real football. And Media Days is, to me, like the unofficial start to football season being here. So I'm all about it. I'm all about it, okay? I'm fired up. I can't wait. And listen, it's going to be very interesting to see how these conferences try to navigate this Protect College Sports Act that I'm a big fan of. But kind of what's going on now behind the scenes is you've got the SEC and the Big Ten trying to basically say, okay, if this is going to happen, we're going to make sure that it's done on our terms as the two bulls in the china shop, so to speak. But I'd say right now it's pretty obvious the Big Ten is the best conference in college football, then the SEC, then the Big 12, then the ACC. That's how I would stack them up. You can't take it away from the Big Ten. SEC has not played in a national championship game in, I think it's been 3 or 4 seasons now at this point. So we'll see. But hey, World Cup yesterday, depending on how much you like soccer, you either thought that was an all-time classic or you thought it was a dud. I'm on the latter. I was waiting for some goals. I didn't need a 6-4 third place game like what we saw with France and England. I thought that Spain was going to score first, and once they did score, what I really wanted was Argentina to come back and score a goal just to kind of make it interesting. But as I understand it, had that game gone to penalty kicks, Argentina would have probably been favored in penalty kicks, even though Spain had played the much better game all afternoon long. Is that a fair assessment, guys? If that had gone to penalty kicks, Argentina would have been suddenly the favorite.
That seemed to be conventional wisdom. I'm not sure I was buying it, but that's pretty much what the experts were saying.
That's what the experts were saying. I know what I don't know, so I'm just following the experts here. That's all I'm doing. But it was, listen, 1-0, Spain wins, congratulations. And you could tell there was clearly some beef with President Trump. Did you see that Spain's team shared the photo after they won, and they photoshopped out the President of the United States? He was kind of standing left of the team after he gave them the trophy, and they were kind of celebrating, and the confetti was falling. And Trump's kind of lingering. And I think what Trump was doing there is he was trying to just screw with them and be in the photo, knowing full well his relationship with Spain is not the best. I mean, he was threatening them last week with tariffs for basically being freeloaders as it relates to NATO. So he wanted to drop himself in that photo. Well, now with AI, you can Photoshop anybody out in about 5 seconds. So that's what Spain did. They have their celebratory photo up on their X account, and Trump is clearly Photoshopped out of the photo because he was standing right there, left of the team, as the confetti was falling, and they were kind of, celebrating and holding up the trophy and whatnot. So they just blew him out, which, whatever. I mean, let them do their thing. There's no love lost there. There's no reason to pretend like there isn't. It wasn't super offensive to me because in the end, the sun rises today, and Spain still needs us to keep its country afloat. There's no doubt about that. Steve Moore will be here at the bottom of the hour. We'll look forward to talking with him about the state of the economy right when the markets open up in 15 minutes. He's a former economic advisor to President Trump. And listen, there's a lot of good going on, but there's also things that need some improvement here. So Steve will analyze that as we roll through the 8 o'clock hour. Pete Mundo with you on a Monday morning on KCMO Talk Radio.
From Lenexa to Lee's Summit, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Is this a quitter mentality if you're in Lee's Summit? I saw this story on the Kansas City Star that Lee's Summit City Council member Cinda Rader resigned from her seat last week. And they wrote about it over the weekend on the Star's website, saying that she felt she was not being respected on City Council. She wrote in a statement, "Throughout my time on the council, I have worked to ensure that residents' concerns were heard and thoughtfully considered. Unfortunately, I have increasingly felt that my perspective and the perspectives of many of the citizens I represent have not been given respect or consideration necessary to foster sound collaborative decision-making. That realization," she writes, "has led me to conclude that I can no longer serve effectively in this role." Cinda Rader, she ran for mayor against Beto Lopez, and she lost in April 56 to 44%. She came on the show. I thought she had a solid vision for Lee's Summit. She was really fighting the apartment growth that has just been dramatic out there in Lee's Summit, as many of you know. And that's happened on the Johnson County side, too. It's not unique to any suburb, but, you know, people are trying to fight back against it in Lee's Summit who don't want to basically turn that community into Overland Park Light. That being the case, I don't like the idea of just quitting, because I think that's a quitting and quitters attitude. You know, okay, so you didn't win the mayor's race, and now you're going to leave the city council because you feel like your voice isn't being heard. Now, you ran for mayor, and obviously, I would say the establishment was against you. There's no doubt that the developer class, the city council establishment folks were on Beto Lopez's side. And, you know, listen, he's been on this show as well. We wish him well. I tried to get him on the show regarding the issues at Downtown Days. I did not hear back from him. Hopefully I will at some point. But resigning, that's just quitting. That's quitting on the people that knocked doors for you. That's quitting on the people who donated to your mayoral campaign. That's quitting on every person who went to the polls to vote for you. You don't quit, you stay in the fight. We need fighters. And this feels like an overly emotional statement saying, well, no one's listening to me enough, so I'm going to just pack up my bags and go home. No, that's not what you do. You stay in it. The people have elected you to serve a term, and to walk away from them and say I'm done because I don't feel like my voice is being heard, well, then figure out how to get a bigger voice. And yeah, you ran for mayor. And I know that many people in this audience were supportive of Cinda Rader's run for mayor in Lee's Summit. But just because things don't go your way doesn't mean that you just get to, well, close up shop. In the city statement, Mayor Lopez said, "We thank Council Member Rader for her service to the residents of Lee's Summit." You know, here's how I would look at it too. What do your opponents think of this? They're probably happy you're gone. They're probably breathing a sigh of relief that you're gone, which means you're doing them a favor. So you get a letter out of it that might get some Facebook shares, might get some social media attention. Yeah, we're talking about it here on KCMO, but in the end, are the constituents that you were fighting for better off today with you no longer on the Lee's Summit City Council than being on the Lee's Summit City Council? I don't think so. Not for a second. Not for a second. You cannot convince me that this is in any way a benefit to those people in Lee's Summit who have been, you know, solidly behind somebody like Cinda Rader for the last several months, whether it's her time on the city council or her run for mayor. I think you quit on every single one of them. And that, in and of itself, is disappointing. And there's literally nothing that I could think of that would excuse this. Nothing. You got to find people then who are going to fight alongside you, who want to be a part of the fight, who want to push back with some of the things that you also believe in. That's the part of this that I just do not understand. And it's frustrating to me to try to get a feel for, Lee Summit not wanting, and I get why Lee Summit, by the way, does not want to be Overland Park Light. We've been very critical of how Overland Park has gone about its city planning. And all these cities have their, Vision 2050 and all this nonsense. It's like, would you just build some homes that people want to live in and stop overcomplicating this stuff? But they can't ever do that because they got to have the big fancy name. And, they got to make it seem like it's all properly planned out under this grandiose vision. And, it's just doing in many cases what the developers want them to do. That's oftentimes what these city councils end up doing, which is disappointing. And when you're one of the people pushing back against that, okay, you stay in the fight. You stay in the fight. That's what you do. You don't give up the fight. And unfortunately, as far as I can tell, Cinder Raiders just gave up on the fight. Coming up, the markets are going to open up here in just a couple of minutes. Steve Moore is a former economic advisor to President Trump. The good and what can be improved on as we get set for the fall and the midterms next.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO.
Well, the markets are opening up here to kick off the new week, and interestingly, despite some of the issues with the Iran war over the weekend, stocks are higher to start the week here. Keeping a close eye on those oil prices as well. Steve Moore is joining us. He does an outstanding job with his More Money show that airs weekends, Saturday afternoons, 2 o'clock here on KCMO. And then, of course, Unleash Prosperity. He's a former economic advisor to the President of the United States. Steve, it's great to have you on the show. Always appreciate your time. Right now, it feels like the American economy has a lot of good storylines. Now, there are some issues, but good storylines that I don't think are getting enough attention from the administration, especially coming out of the speech last week. What's your read on what they should be selling right now versus what is being sold?
Well, good morning, Pete. And the first thing I would say is just the amazing amount of wealth that is being created in this country. As we speak, I'm looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And look, I know the stock market isn't the economy, but, you know, the vast majority of Americans have their wealth, all their lifetime savings in the stock market. It's up to 52,300. 40 years ago when I came to Washington, the Dow was about 2,000. Now it's at 52,000. So this has been an amazing run. And the NASDAQ, unbelievable, getting close to 26,000 on the NASDAQ. So these are amazing numbers. And you're right that the big thing that's holding up the economy is the oil price, which, let me just check. I think it was running at about $75 a barrel. I checked yesterday. It fluctuates so much. But, we need to get that oil price get back down below $70 a barrel. It was $60 a barrel before the Iran conflict started. So, and people forget, Pete, that, prior to February when the Iran conflict started, we had the lowest gas prices, adjusted for inflation, but basically in history, and we can get back to that. I'm very bullish on the U.S. economy. There are things that we got to get this Iran situation settled. But we are the envy of the world. Every other country is looking at the United States like, wow, we've got, China is flatlined. Britain is not growing. They've had, 4 prime ministers in the last 5 years or something like that. Look at Britain. They're so stupid they don't even have air conditioning. I mean, so, we are the strongest economy. We're the wealthiest economy. We're a land of opportunity. And Trump is a pro-business president, and that matters a lot.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You're right. The gas price is the one thing that people are going to feel the most right now. That's just an unfortunate reality.
That and food prices. Grocery prices are still high, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There's been a drought. There have been issues with the fertilizer. People don't realize, Pete, that a lot of that fertilizer that we use to grow our food comes in through the Strait of Hormuz as well. So that's been disrupted. So, we're going to see continued months of high food prices, I hate to say, and it may even be into the fall. But, look, I just feel very confident that the second half of this year is going to be good, really good for the economy, and same thing with 2027.
Now, what about something that I've heard you talk about, Steve, and there might be some disconnect between grassroots conservative Republican voters.
I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Data centers. You know where I'm going, right?
Yes.
Data centers.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, you're a proponent, and I understand. I totally get it. Like, I get it. It's the way of the future. But you're hearing, some of the rural parts, Kansas and Missouri, people are not digging these things. So where do you think we should be when it comes to our policy on this going forward?
Well, I'm glad, actually, Pete, that you asked me about that. Because, look, I respectfully know that a lot of people have negative attitudes about AI and data centers. I'm glad you asked me about this because last Thursday I took a field trip to the largest data center in the country. You know where that is?
Where's that?
A lot of people don't know this. Even the area, they don't know this. But the largest data center in the country is in Loudoun County, Virginia, right next to Dulles Airport. It's a massive 2 football field long. It looks like a massive warehouse. And, we were able to tour the building. Unfortunately, we couldn't take photos and stuff because it's almost top secret, and they're worried about, Chinese espionage. But it is the most mind-numbing thing that you can imagine seeing. I mean, the billions of dollars of investment. And look, if you're against data centers, then you're against the internet because there's no internet without data centers. Then you're against GPS. You're against the apps on your iPhone. You're up because people don't realize that data centers are absolutely essential infrastructure for this modern day communication system that we have. And so, even our, the Pentagon is dependent on data centers for our national security. So we need data centers. They're absolutely vital unless we want to go back to the 1960s. When, remember the old Lily Tomlin routines where she was the switchboard operator. I mean, that's the thing to think about. These data centers, when you're in there, you're looking at this incredible, sophisticated equipment. Like I said, 2 football fields, is unbelievable. And they're processing billions of dollars of, transactions from people all over the country and commerce instantaneously. It's mind-boggling. And all we saw, by the way, was construction going on. We saw trucks coming in and out, hundreds and hundreds of construction workers. I mean, these are jobs. This is the future. The United States has to dominate this. So I do feel very strongly that data centers are important. If people in Kansas City don't want them, then we'll build them somewhere else. I do believe people should have self-determination. In other words, if you don't want it in Kansas City, I think you're crazy because it's going to be a lot of jobs, a lot of, technology jobs, a lot of construction jobs. By the way, every one of those workers was a union worker. The union, by the way, the construction unions are the biggest advocates of data centers. We need a lot more of them, but we should put them in communities that want them. And if communities say they don't, then we shouldn't have them. But tell me the argument against them.
Well, the argument seems to be more also about, hey, should states or local governments be subsidizing them when in the end, you're right, there's temporary construction work out of it. But these data centers, like you said, they're 2-3 football fields big, and you got 10 guys sitting around working on them. So the jobs on the back end don't come to fruition. And then also, it's not clear how much revenue states or cities generate off of these data centers since there are no employees. Do you have any insight into how that works?
Well, first of all, it is true that these are incredibly, efficient machinery and stuff. But I saw hundreds and hundreds of thousands of workers. They were constantly expanding the data center. So, as I said, it was like, you were building the Empire State Building, all these trucks coming in and commerce that was going on there. They bring a lot of money to the community. Now, it's true when you go into the actual data center, there are technicians and stuff, probably hundreds of them. But, these data centers kind of run themselves, and then that's what makes them so highly efficient. I believe in self-rule. As I said, if people in Chicago or people in Kansas City or so on say, we don't want it here, then let's build them somewhere else. But we need them. And now I think the other argument, Pete, I hear all the time, and this is a legitimate worry. People are nervous about the future. They're nervous about whether AI will take their jobs. A robot going to take my job? And so that is a realistic fear of people. I would simply say every time we've had a new invention, whether it was the automobile or electricity or the internet, these things create more jobs and higher paying jobs over time. But look, I get people are anxious about it. The tech community has not done a very good job explaining this. And one final point, Pete, and I found this to be the most persuasive because I know you have a fairly conservative audience, and some of them are probably grimacing when I've been saying this, but the only real issue here, because AI is here, businesses are already using it incredibly productively. It is here. It is coming so rapidly, and the only question is, who will lead this revolution? Will it be the United States or will it be China? We can beat them just like we won the internet wars, but we can't do it if we can't build the data centers that we need.
Stephen Moore is here. He does a great job. Unleash Prosperity, former economic advisor to President Trump. And the last thing I'll just note on this one, too, Steve, is it does seem like there is a rural versus urban divide here, where the rural folks feel like, hey, if my water bill's going up, my electricity rates are going up, why do I have to carry the load for people in big cities who are using AI or whatever it might be? Why is that falling on us in rural parts of Kansas and Missouri? Is there a way to stick these things in skyscrapers in D.C. and Boston and New York so it feels like, hey, everyone's got some skin in the game? Or is it just, hey, the land prices are cheap in rural America, so that's where they're going? Because there's a rural-urban divide on this as well.
Yeah, there is. But, I have to say, and this is probably we can talk about this on a later show because it's a big issue you're bringing up. I don't get that argument. If you're in a rural area where there's not just a lot of farmland and a lot of empty space, wouldn't you want the data center there? I mean, it would seem to me that you're going to get all this job, all this money's going to come into your community. It's almost like, Pete, go back 100 years ago, and this guy Henry Ford comes to Detroit and says, "I think I'm going to build all these auto plants here." And people say, no, you're going to use all our electricity. You're going to use our water. No, don't build it here. Well, why? Don't you want economic development in these areas? But I do believe in self-determination. In other words, you're right. If a local rural community says, no, we don't want it, okay. I don't think they should be forced upon people. I think the community should decide. And if they say, look, we don't want this here, then we have to find other places to build them. Eventually, by the way, we won't be able to put these out in outer space, for goodness sakes. We might be able to use satellite technology to do it. But this is the future, folks, and it is coming. And I just want to make sure America remains number one.
Steve, let me ask you briefly just about health care. Listen, that's another thing that gets a lot of attention. But you've noted that the healthcare industry, and you've had a lot of posts and graphs on this that you share on social media, which everybody should follow you at Stephen Moore. The industry's a mess, and I think Democrats are going to kind of use it against Republicans this fall. But, the big government side of healthcare is largely to blame for all of this. So what's the simplistic way to explain what's going on with this industry and how to actually solve it and fix it?
Well, you just said it very well, Pete. I mean, you think about this. What are the two industries that America plays the largest role, where the government plays the largest role in? Well, education and healthcare. And what are the two areas where the prices are rising the fastest? Education and healthcare. Anybody with a college student, paying tuition knows that. So, we keep having the government play a bigger role in healthcare. There's so much Medicaid fraud. By the way, we know that the hundreds of billions of dollars are just being stolen from the Medicaid system to people who are not eligible or just, ripping off the system. So we need more transparency. This is one of our efforts is, hospital. When you go to the hospital or doctor, do you ever ask what this stuff is going to cost? Because they don't tell you. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
It's like going to the auto repair shop and just saying, "Oh, fix my car," and you don't ask how much it's going to cost. So we need more healthcare transparency, and we need, to have more competition in the healthcare market because people are right to be angry. The cost of healthcare is running out of control. It's going to bankrupt our country. We have the best healthcare in the world, but boy, we have the government playing too big a role, in my opinion.
That's so well said. Steve Moore, hey, keep up the great work, Steve. Always appreciate you coming on KCMO in Kansas City. Love having your weekend show on the radio station as well. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Pete. And by the way, if people want to get our free hotline, get it. Just go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up. And sometimes the best things in life really are free because it costs you nothing.
I love it. Unleashprosperity.com. There you go. Steve, we'll talk to you soon. Have a great week.
Thank you.
All right, Steve Moore on KCMO Talk Radio. 913-408-7957. I'm seeing a lot of the feedback from you on the text line right now. So you want to hop on, follow up with what Steve Moore was saying there. I know the data center issue it's a tough one because I get what Steve is saying. Like, hey, the free market, this is where we're going. We're racing China in the AI battles. But I also understand, and it's been a deal in many of our, not just rural communities, but heck, independents and some of the others have been like, what's the cost to us? And it's not like you're getting thousands of new jobs out of it, right? You got anywhere from a couple of dozen to maybe 100 workers that are permanent workers coming out of these projects, which means you're not really transforming a local economy. So there are a lot of issues and a lot of questions surrounding this. 913-408-7957. How you join us here on a Monday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. And in the 9 o'clock hour, I got to get to this topic. I'll do it in the 9 o'clock hour. And that is pastors using AI for their sermons. What is going on there? All coming up on KCMO.
from Leawood to Liberty. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
On the text line, we just got done with Steve Moore talking about the data center. Pete, not buying Steve's take on data centers, that rural America should embrace them. There are no long-term jobs, and sounds like imminent domain mentality. Do it for the good of the country. Listen, that's where I understand where many in rural America, Kansas and Missouri, has had plenty of these issues pop up in different communities. So Steve's take on the data center is, well, it's going to bring all these jobs to your community, so if you don't want them, fine, someone else will take them. But if you're a local farmer in fill-in-the-blank county in Kansas or Missouri, and they want to build a data center down the road, and your costs of input go up, your water costs, your energy costs go up, you're a farmer. Like, having 25 or 125 workers down the street at a data center doesn't do anything for you. Now, maybe there's some small business owner who runs a convenience store or someone who owns the local gas station. Maybe there's some pickup for them, but it's not the same as having some massive windfall of jobs coming to a community. It's just it's different. That's why this is a tricky conversation to have, because I think it's hard to find the immediate wins for the communities that build them, even though I understand and I agree with Steve's point largely, which is, hey, we're in this race with China and we've got to win the race, John.
Well, I think we need to refine our oppositions, I guess. It's kind of like the Crossroads baseball. We come at this from different angles. You can be against a data center, and that's the whole Big Brother thing. That's one argument. You can be against the use of rural land, which is a separate thing, right? We've got plenty of other land and other places to build them, it seems. So refining what you're against will be more beneficial to addressing what we need to do.
Yeah. Let's go to the phones. Jim is in Kearney on KCMO. What's up, Jim?
Hey, good morning, Pete. Well, I think the data centers, by and large, are getting the nuclear power plant treatment from the 70s that I grew up in. They vilified them, just bad propaganda. And I look at us now, I think we would have been benefited by more nuclear power plants creating energy for this country. And sure, you say they don't have a lot of jobs at a data center, but that's not where the big bucks will be. It'll be the people who build them and then move on to build new ones. That's jobs won't go away. And as we know with industry and especially technology, we create more jobs when this stuff gets rolling that we never even thought about. So
yes.
It'll just really power our future.
Listen, that's an interesting analogy, Jim. Thanks for the call. There are people right now still fighting to bring back nuclear power plants. Mike Thompson on the Kansas side is one of them. So that's an interesting point. I don't think it's perfectly apples to apples, because I think that you look at these data centers and you have to, from a rural America perspective, say, is it just our job to do the work and the heavy lifting for the good of the country on behalf of D.C., New York, and L.A.? And that's a fair critique to have. Pastors using AI, that controversy's next. Well, you might be coming off of church yesterday and wondering, did my pastor just AI that sermon? How crazy is that? That's now the conversation that some people are going to have. Wall Street Journal had this huge piece yesterday, and I want to welcome you in to this conversation at 913-408-7957. I have never believed that my pastor has used AI to do anything as it relates to his sermon. But maybe some of you feel differently. The story here in the Wall Street Journal was pastors using AI to help write sermons grapple with where to draw the line. First off, if you're looking for an analogy or something like that, or you're looking to cite a specific passage from the Bible, I'm not opposed to using AI in your sermon from a research perspective. I have no issue with that. I will use AI to expedite my research for this show. Hey, tell me, is there a story in the Kansas City Star about the streetcar rails buckling under the heat prior to this past weekend? Oh, yeah, here you go. ChatGPT or Copilot or any of them will give you that information very quickly. It saves me time. So I don't have any issue with a pastor using AI for the specific purposes of expediting the research process on how you might put together a sermon or points that you want to make broadly about a sermon tied to specific passages. I don't mind that. But if you just say to, let's say, ChatGPT, and you could do this, hey, ChatGPT, give me a 20-minute sermon talking about, let me think about one of the verses I've liked recently. Luke 12:25. Give me a complete sermon about anxiety and how we need to handle anxiety in Luke 12:25 and build me out a 20-minute sermon around this. And ChatGPT spits something out for you in probably less than 30 seconds. That I want no part of. And Luke 12:25 is, by the way, Jesus asking, who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? I love that. Worrying does not add any value to your life and any time to your life. So why do you spend time living in the world of anxiety and worry? There's no point. And it's such a simple verse that I love. But you could build a 20-minute sermon around it on AI, but that wouldn't be real. It wouldn't be genuine. And I think people would sniff it out pretty quickly. I was talking to somebody who coaches a lot of talk radio talent, sports and news talk. And I asked this individual specifically about a new host who's got a national show. The show doesn't air in Kansas City, so I'm not worried about outing this person. And this coach, he said to me, yeah, you know, the guy's getting better, but he's got a lot on his plate, and I can tell that he's using AI to manufacture some of his talking points. And he's using AI to manufacture some of his debates and conflicts on the show. And I was like, really? That's what people now in my industry are using ChatGPT or really any of these AI platforms for? And he's like, oh yeah, it's happening everywhere. And I just feel like as a listener, if I was listening to another show, I could sniff that out immediately. Just like you could probably sniff it out with your pastor. So this Wall Street Journal piece says on Saturday afternoon, about 20 hours before he was due to preach, Darrell Stelter II sat behind a 2-monitor workstation crammed into the sound booth of his church, a slide deck glowing on one screen, and ChatGPT open on another. A sermon titled Forged, part of a summer-long journey through the book of Proverbs, was taking shape somewhere between his own notes and a handful of AI chatbots. When he opened up Claude, it greeted him by the name, back at it, Disciple Maker. Stelter has spent more than 2 decades. Disciple Maker. Oh my gosh, come on. Although maybe I should have John and Mark use that on the show. Disciple Maker. What are we doing here? Stelter has spent more than 2 decades building Oklahoma City's Bible Methodist Church, where he's the lead pastor largely from nothing. He's also part of ChatGPT's top 1% of users and runs a Facebook group of 500 pastors experimenting with the technology, and has built a tool that can spit out dozens of sermon illustrations in seconds. You tell me, if you found out that your pastor was AIing sermons, you in or are you out? 913-408-7957. If I got the sense or the sniff that my pastor is using AI, I am running for the hills. Okay? That's what I'm doing, John.
How do you sense this, since I'm an old man? Sometimes when I look up stuff and read it, I can go, oh, that's a load of crap. So I see it for myself.
Yes.
You would say that you hear it.
Okay.
Would it be a blatant error?
That is an excellent, excellent point. So it's much easier to read, and we've talked about this. The M- is unfortunately the giveaway when something is being AI'd, or a lot of emojis like Leetta Felter, the Olathe councilwoman, always AIs all her stuff. M- is all over the place. Emojis all over the place. It's embarrassing.
Quick interjection.
Yes, go ahead.
I've seen people critique the M- thing that you are by saying that obviously it existed prior to. Your point is the proliferation of the usage of that, correct?
Yes.
That's what I think
unless
the person intentionally is trying to obscure the point. Yes, that punctuation's always existed, but no, it doesn't get used as much as it is now.
Correct. No one used M-dashes unless you went to law school. Now, everyone's got an M- in their writing, which means they're just chat GPTing or whatever. They're AIing things. To
Does
your
that mean
point,
cut and
I think
paste
it's
here?
Yes.
Cut and paste here.
Yes,
Beginning
exactly.
end. Yeah.
I think it's harder to hear, though, because unless you knew something was factually inaccurate, which, by the way, you can be factually inaccurate and not use AI. I mean, that happens all the time.
Sure.
So I think it's harder to hear in terms of a radio show or in terms of, a sermon. I'm not clear on how exactly you would get the sense, but I think like anything else, if you found out about it, if you found out that I was AIing monologues, or if you found out your pastor, I think, was AIing sermons, you'd be like, well, that's just not natural to who the person is. That's not your actual thoughts. That's a machine. I'll just go read the sermon online if you're just going to chat GPT it. So I think that's where it's the lack of authenticity that really would hurt somebody's brand if you found out about it.
I'll give you an example. Watch YouTube, said Kansas City organized crime history. I thought this will be interesting. I'll watch it. Within the first 6 sentences, the guy's talking about the River Quay. I'm like, oh, for Pete's sake. River Key, and I'm out. Click.
Yes, there you go. All right, let's go to the phones. 913-408-7957. And just so you know, too, I'm not going to read you this whole Wall Street Journal piece. I'll share it on Facebook and get all your reaction there. It's thousands of words. But this pastor in Oklahoma City is using AI. He says he makes $600 a week, has a $1,500 monthly housing stipend. He's got a bunch of other side jobs he's got to do to make ends meet. So he's using AI to help with his sermons and saving himself hours and upon hours of time. Is that good enough for you? Let's start with Frank in Kansas City. Frank, you're on KCMO. Good morning.
Okay, guys. The Bible is a faith book. We have the Holy Spirit if any preacher is preaching without the Holy Spirit and the Word of God, it's worthless. That's about it.
Yep. Frank, short, sweet, to the point. So that's a good angle as well. If he's preaching from the book and his ideas are not coming from the Holy Spirit and he's using a chatbot, then it's not natural, it's not organic, and it's not the Word of God. Great point, Frank. Thanks for making it.
Yeah, it's all natural. See, that's using the brain instead of the spirit.
Yes. Excellent angle there, Frank. Let's go to Mark at Excelsior Springs. Hey, Mark.
Hey, good morning. I've been a pastor for about 50 years, and I have never preached the same sermon twice. Even when I preached multiple services, there's just too much going on in the environment and context to say the same words again and again and again. But having said that, AI can help you with just some ideas, a little to understand what the conversation is about, and then you take off on your own with the Holy Spirit, as Frank just said, and use your own personality and your own words, not copying or plagiarizing, but just using your own words to express something that you feel God is telling you to communicate to the folks.
So is it like writer's block, basically? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm saying that it's no different than if I want to look up a subject, say on biology, I'll look at a scientific website and pull some information out of that website. It's no different than that. It's just a faster way of doing it.
Okay, I agree. That's what I'm saying. If it's like a research tool, right? There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. It's just a research tool.
That's what it is.
You still have to put your own personality and what you feel the Holy Spirit is telling you to do, and it becomes yours. It's not from Chat GPT.
I will say this, Mark, to your point. I'm always impressed when a pastor does, let's say, 3 of more or less the same sermon. Let's say he does an 8 o'clock, a 9:30, and an 11, to use those examples. By the 11, you're more or less doing the same thing in each of the 3. Maybe you tweak things here or there a little bit, but it's like me delivering the same monologue at 6, 7, 8, and 9. And let's be honest, by the 9 o'clock, I'm kind of getting exhausted with my own message, but the reality is people are hearing it for the first time. So you're telling me you actually change everyone up, or you just kind of, nibble around the edges a little bit?
You tweak it around the edges for the context, because there's different people in the audience every time. You don't
exactly.
know who's there, and the Holy Spirit can say, hey, you didn't use this story, but use it now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's my attitude too. All right, that's great. Thank you, Mark. Sometimes people hear me say something at like 8:30 that we said on the show at 6, and they're like, "You said that." I'm like, "Yeah, I said that 2.5 hours ago. 95% of the people are not here at 8:30 that were here at 6, so I'm speaking to a different audience." So it's kind of the same idea to what Mark's saying, where you're giving these sermons twice, 3 times on a Sunday, and the vast majority of people obviously are not staying for 2 services. It's a totally new audience, but you got to make it as compelling as you did the first time, because it's a totally different audience, even though in your mind you're kind of like, oh man, I'm getting a little bored of my own message here. But you can't be, because it's a brand new audience. Text line is 913-408-7957. Pete, any preacher using ChatGPT is lazy. Well, it depends on how you're using it. That's exactly the nuance of the conversation here. If you're doing it like this guy in Oklahoma City, who was written about in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, who says, I've got a lot of jobs, I can't pay the bills just being a preacher, so I'm using ChatGPT to write my sermons, I agree with you. You can't. I'm not going to a church where the preacher's having ChatGPT write the sermons. If it's like Mark in Excelsior Springs and he's saying, I'm using it as basically a research tool. It's like using Google. You're typing things in for research. It just spits it out faster at you with ChatGPT than having to go down the rabbit hole of Google. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So it's about how you're using it. But when you've got this Facebook group, apparently of 500 preachers, led by this guy in Oklahoma City, Darrell Stelter, who is basically experimenting with the technology to AI all of these sermons across the country, I want no part of that. I mean, Mark, your dad was a preacher. What do you think his reaction to this would be?
I don't think he would like it. I could ask him about it, though, later today.
Please.
I'll send him the article.
Please. Send him the article. I want his reaction, and I want to know if he's hearing about this in other parts of the industry. And if he is, then maybe there's a conversation to have with him on the show, if he's willing to do it.
I feel like he'll kind of think what I'm thinking right now, and it's just a little laziness. But
yes, well, I mean, yeah, and to the point of Frank, it's not the word of God speaking to you. It's just, let me dump this into the AI machine and see what it spits out. And that's no way to do it. No way. 913-408-7957 is our text line and our studio line here on KCMO. So we've been monitoring SEC Media Day starting, of course, as the new Kansas City home, exclusive home of the Missouri Tigers. And I just saw this from Eli Drinkowitz, the head coach of Mizzou. I will share with you going into the bottom of the hour news next on KCMO. All right, right now it's summertime. It is hot as could be across Kansas City. Now, that typically will mean more time outside, more cookouts, family gatherings, even if that's not today. Hopefully it cools off by the weekend. But you've got people walking around the property. And the last thing you need is Aunt Sally tripping over, your driveway, your patio, uneven concrete. That can become a real problem. Well, the good folks at KC Pier tell me they're seeing it all over Kansas City right now because of our heavy clay soil and all the rain that we had this past spring. So these concrete slabs are shifting, they're settling, they're creating problems on driveways, sidewalks, patios, porches, and steps. Well, you may not need to replace it. KC Pier has a polyjacking service that can lift and level sunken concrete quickly and affordably. So before that next backyard party or family get-together, have KC Pier come out and take a look. When you reach out to KC Pier here in Kansas City, a real Kansas Cityan picks up the phone right away. Not a call center, not some AI robot, speaking of ChatGPT. So eliminate those trip hazards right now. Schedule your free assessment with KC Pier by going to kcpier.com. That's kcpier.com, and ask about their polyjacking service that you heard about right here on KCMO.
from Gladstone to Gardner. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
So SEC Media Days is underway in Tampa, Florida. And as the home of the Missouri Tigers, obviously keeping a close eye on that as your Kansas City affiliate starting this fall on KCMO Talk Radio. And last hour, if you missed it, we had on Cody Goodwin. He's covers Mizzou for 24/7 Sports. He is in Tampa this week. And Eli Drinkwitz was at the podium. Well, I guess he's taken the podium here officially at SEC Media Days later this hour. But he talked to some local media folks this morning, and he's already talking about how difficult the schedule is and the fact that the SEC has moved to a 9-game conference schedule. Here's what Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz had to say about that move and what it means. This is from ABC 17.
We're all saying it. We're all saying it. I think we're all saying it when we look at our schedules. It's going to be a real challenge. I think Coach Kiffin has been somebody who's been, whether publicly or privately, been able to he's been the one on the forefront even last year in these meetings saying, guys, I don't think that this is the right play for us. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And we got to meet those challenges head on now. I think the one thing that we don't get enough credit for in the SEC is the challenge of the stadiums that we play in the environments that we play in. I think, obviously FIFA World Cup has done a tremendous job of putting our stadiums on display. And the stadiums they're playing in, they're great stadiums, but they're not comparable to the SEC stadiums that you're talking about. I mean, I think yesterday FIFA's World Championship was in front of 80,000. Well, that's 25,000 short of some of these other stadiums that we play in Death Valley and Athens and in Ben Griffin Hill, I think it's 88,000. But, I mean, Knoxville, that's a whole different deal. And there's nothing you can do to remove 20,000 people from a game. That's a tremendous challenge for anybody to walk into. And, hey, we got to play Starkville at night this year with those cowbells. I think that's about 80,000 strong there. That's going to be a real challenge for everybody.
So Eli Drinkwitz, I get what he's saying, but let's be honest, the Big 12's been at 9 games for over 10 years. And what I will say is what the SEC has always done that I've always been highly critical of is their soft, their cream puff game that they've always done in November, oftentimes before rivalry weekend. They'll, have St. Mary's School for the Blind come in and beat the you-know-what out of them. It's basically a bye week in November. That's always driven me nuts about the SEC. So I do not have a ton of sympathy for the woe is us. We've got a 9-game conference schedule now, especially when the Big Ten has been there. And the Big Ten right now is the best conference in college football and has racked up multiple national championships in a row. So I understand that that's kind of how the game is played in college football. You got to stand up for your conference, but I don't think that sales pitch is really going to be working outside of SEC country. News in 90 seconds. We're back with some weekend streetcar drama next.
The fun's not done after Mundo in the Morning. Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Join me for Uncanceled at 10 o'clock right here on KCMO Talk Radio.
Rough weekend for the streetcar crowd. So about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, streetcar service between the Riverfront and Union Station was suspended due to an incident near 16th and Main. And it resumed last night, give or take 4 or 5 o'clock. So it was almost 24 hours that the streetcar was out of operation. Now, you can be a proponent of the streetcar and admit that it's a terrible look when this thing gets shut down. And the craziest part is, like, the streetcar is not officially even saying what happened over the weekend, but a lot of photos surfaced on social media, and it looks like what happened is just the rail line kind of buckled under the heat that we've been dealing with the last few days at 16th and Main. So the whole thing got shut down from the Riverfront to Union Station. Now, Union Station to UMKC was operating as normal every 10 to 12 minutes, but anywhere north of Union Station was obviously just not working and not functioning. And even the streetcar director, Tom Durand, he was posting on social media about it over the weekend because people were like, dude, what's going on here? What's happening? And he was being very evasive. Now, Tom's invited me down for the streetcar ride. I will take him up on the offer. But all he said to some people was, no collision. We're investigating a portion of track slab in the crossroads after a report of some rail movement. We'll have some more to share as soon as the field reviews and inspects, or as soon as the field reviews and inspections are complete. That was 2 days ago. It's like, dude, we've all seen the photos on social media. The rail line buckled. And as a result, you couldn't do anything, and you couldn't get the streetcar anywhere north of Union Station because of how the streetcar operates. And here's the deal. You know, this thing, the extension down to UMKC cost $100 million per mile. It is, whether you like it or not, it's an awful investment. Even if you like it, you have to just admit, I like it, but I know that it is a bad expenditure of taxpayer monies. Now, the feds kicked in a lot, all right, especially on the UMKC portion. I believe that was under Biden, of course. The Fed did kick in a lot, but still, you've got plenty of local sales tax monies and just tax dollars in general going to the streetcar extension. And this comes, interestingly, on the heels of Mayor Lucas saying last week that he's ready for east-west expansion, maybe the airport, which is 20 miles from downtown. As John Anthony likes to joke, it's a short flight from downtown to the airport. 20 miles at $100 million a mile would be a $2 billion project to have that streetcar, which, by the way, at the pace that it goes, would take you about an hour and a half to get up to the airport on that streetcar. Who in their right mind would be like, well, it's free mass transit, so I guess I'll take the streetcar and waste an hour of my time. The most valuable thing that you have in your life is your time. Mm-hmm. And if it's one thing to use mass transit to save money, I'll give you an example. And I gave you this story a few weeks ago, but when I was in New York City for the radio conference, I got off the airplane at LaGuardia, and I took a bus to a subway to get to downtown New York, and then I walked about 15 minutes. And it took me, all in all, door to door, LaGuardia to the hotel that I was staying at for the conference. It took me about 50 minutes. Now, I looked up an Uber, and the Uber would have been 45 to 50 minutes, very similar time, but the Uber was running $90. The bus to the subway was a total of $4. So I said, you know what? I'll do it the old school way. I'll save $85 in the process. That'll make sense. No one in Kansas City is going to say, I'll skip the $20 to $30 Uber to spend 2 to 3 times the amount of time taking the free mass transit. You're not going to do that. No one in their right mind is going to do that, John. So who exactly are we trying to appease with a plan like this?
How about that travel time? You could do the Agatha Christie novel plot in between that time, on the train to the airport. Or an express stuff here.
Oh my gosh,
you could show
that's
two
so
movies
true.
in that time, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for some people, literally, it'll take you more time on the streetcar than to fly to a place like Dallas or Chicago.
Yeah.
Which is about 45 minutes in the air.
I lived in South Kansas City, and I would take a friend to the airport from Baker, right? And they'd be headed. They'd be in St. Louis before I could get home to Martin City.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's probably a 40-minute. I think I've done the St. Louis thing once. I've connected there. It's 40 minutes, maybe 45. To your point. So it's just a terrible idea, and it's not just me saying this. I was happy to see Kevin Collison. He runs City Scene KC. They cover a lot of things, just KCMO proper. He was on with Nick Haynes' Kansas City Weekend Review on PBS this weekend, and here's what he said about Mayor Lucas and the streetcar going to the airport. And this was recorded, by the way, before the weekend issue where the streetcar line buckled at 16th and Main and shut the whole thing down for 24 hours.
No more conversations about Streetcar until we figure out a way to pay for it. Everybody keeps throwing out ideas. Quentin is the latest, and number two, Streetcar is not the way to go to the airport if the billions of dollars were raised. We've got to figure out as a community how to pay our local share, and that's assuming there's a federal government that's going to be ready to match what we did. But how they built our streetcar currently is not going to work. Going east-west, going up to the airport, going to North Kansas City. Quentin, if he really wants to leave a legacy, he should start the heavy lifting of trying to assemble the kind of public effort to come up with a local matching source.
That's Kevin Collison. And by the way, that last idea, if basically, hey, the mayor starts fundraising, where the heck is the mayor going to fundraise if it's $2 billion, and that's probably at this point a low estimate for 20 miles of streetcar track based on the $100 million a mile we spent to go to UMKC. I mean, Mayor Q's got some juice. Mayor Q cannot raise hundreds of millions of dollars regionally for a streetcar extension. For then, to go to the feds and be like, well, we've got $500 million. Can you match this? There is no way that this mayor can possibly fundraise that kind of money. Not a chance. On the text line, Pete, I was on the streetcar last week. It went 4 blocks. Then there was an announcement about a disruption on the line. So I got off at 39th and Main, and there were 2 guys who had the sidewalk taped off because they were washing windows. I just walked around the tape, and then they wanted to fight. I'm 70 years old. Okay, so the kicker there is the 70-year-old guy almost got beat up by a couple of window washers. But more importantly, the streetcar was not operating because of window washers. And that doesn't include the times when, hey, the car is parked slightly off kilter and the streetcar can't get around it, right? I mean, it's absolutely crazy. On the text line, Pete, in March, I looked at taking the streetcar from Union Station to an event at Bartle, only to find no service at all due to a fire on the south side. The punchline is we waited about 20 minutes before someone bothered to tell us what was going on. Exactly right. Exactly right. On the text line, Pete, I've gone to see comedians who would complain when they came to town saying our airport was basically in Iowa, or it might as well have been. Yeah, no, listen, it's up there, but I'm sure many of you know this. What I've been told, and maybe, John, you can confirm this, my understanding historically as to why they put the airport where they put it was that the city, I guess, thought the metro would grow up north, and obviously it grew much more to the south, and that was just, I guess, a miscalculation when the airport was originally put in there, 65 years ago, or 55 years ago.
Got a good deal on the property.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just now that the north is kind of filling in there, so yeah.
Yes, well, you're right about that. Right now, the Northland's the place to be. It's moving in fast. I remember looking at homes up north when we were looking at homes 7-8 years ago, and the main reason was hey, since we don't have family in town and people fly in to see us and we fly out once in a while to see family, it would have been nice to be 15 minutes from the airport. But then I was like, you know what? I think being 10 minutes away from the office is much more valuable than being 15 minutes away from the airport. So that was That was my calculation there. But listen, I get it. A lot of people that travel a lot for work end up living up north because that 10, 15-minute drive to the airport is very convenient. And almost anywhere in Johnson County feels like it's going to be at least a half hour. For me, it's like 38 minutes. That's my door-to-door picking up at the airport. I know it's just under 40 if I got to go get somebody.
They're going to run the bus route like they had the service to the airport for the World Cup, so they're going to keep that going because people in Johnson County go, I'll take this. They weren't necessarily associated with the World Cup. They just took advantage of it.
I know they shut it down early. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, but are you saying they're going to bring it back?
I had read that they were going to continue it because of the ridership. I'll have to dig up that article and see.
I'm just curious because that's I remember that was kind of part of the grand plan from Mike Kelly, the Johnson County chairman, was to kind of have this public transit to and from the airport, dropping off people in Overland Park. But I remember a week or two ago we talked about how they were shutting it down early, but I knew also, to your point, they do want to make this a permanent thing. So I got to see if that's going to happen or not. 913-408-7957 is our text line, is our studio line right here on KCMO. Someone dropped the name Clay Chastain and his light rail system, and you are officially banned from texting into the show. Forever! You're done. We'll wrap it up before Keatsman Uncanceled comes up at 10 right here on KCMO. A rough few days for Taco Bell. All right, in the PR department. We'll tell you why coming up next.
Vince Colonnese here. Join me for your lunch hour from 11 to 2 on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Vince will be in Kansas City for our America 250 event coming up September 16th. They got an update on ticket sales at the end of the week last week, and they are moving right along, more than halfway sold out, just a couple of weeks in. So if you want to get your tickets, get them now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. Vince Colonnese, Sky Benson, McGraw-Millhaven all in town for our event. You're getting a plated dinner. You're getting drinks out of it, so there's more than just myself, Keatsman, and the national guys having a good time. You get John, and who knows what Hawaiian shirt he's wearing. Mark will be there in his America 250 Royals hat. So it's going to be a great time. We're looking forward to it, and tickets are moving quickly on the website. Now, I offered Vince, I said, hey, do you want to come in for the Chiefs game on Monday the 14th against the Broncos? And he passed just because, and I forgot about this, but the week prior is that Republican National Convention midterm deal that they're doing down in Dallas. So he's already traveling for that. He'll be doing his shows there. And then he's going to travel the following week, to come to Kansas City. So he just wanted to cut down on some of the travel. And I don't know. Vince I don't think he's the biggest football fan, which that's totally fine. Save it for someone who is. But he will not be joining us at the Chiefs game. Guy Benson was all in. He wants to get out to Arrowhead. His producer, Christine, wants to get out to Arrowhead. She's also, I think, very excited for the free drinks that come along with it. So they're both fired up. It's going to be a good time. All right, explosive diarrhea parasite, cyclosporiasis, is potentially coming in part, according to one Chicago man, from a popular Taco Bell menu item. Alonzo Zaragoza, 46, was rushed to the emergency room last week after suffering relentless diarrhea for more than a week, he told NBC Chicago 5. He said that he didn't sleep for more than an hour and a half continuously in the last week because of this cyclosporiasis. So thankfully he's doing better. Now the belief was, here's the problem for Taco Bell. The problem for Taco Bell is that they're getting ripped every which way because they source a lot of their lettuce from this Taylor Farms in California that apparently is where the outbreak began. But this morning there's an update. Officials with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration say that the lettuce sample from the supplier, Taylor Foods in California, was re-reviewed and found that the test does not represent true amplification and should be considered a false positive. So now Taco Bell has a mess on its hands, literally and figuratively.
So it was just Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
So it was just Taco Bell doing what Taco Bell does to many of those who consume Taco Bell. And now Taco Bell's going to fight off what is a false positive from Taylor Farms, where they source their iceberg lettuce out of in California. And all the memes that are coming out where people are like, is it really the Taylor Farms or is it the Taco Bell, John?
They did recommend masks and a 6-foot distance, though, with this. So those are similar. We've been through this before.
Oh, my gosh. Well, John said he had Taco Bell last week, so Mark's got to keep a close eye on him in case we need any backup.
I'll excuse myself. If I disappear quickly, you'll understand.
I completely, and I prefer it that way. I mean, I'm not on the same side of the glass as you, Mark, is. I know he would prefer it very much. Mark's in Overland Park. Mark, you hanging in there? You had Taco Bell on Friday night, huh?
Yes, I'm not much of a risk taker, but Friday night we went through the drive-thru. No one there. We got 4 items. My wife and I did. 3 of the 4 had lettuce on them, and we're still both upright this morning.
All right. Well, my only bit of advice is if you end up in the ER with cyclosporiasis, please do call in. Let us know how you're doing, and you can listen to the show on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Well, I told John if things go south, I would report back.
All right.
And,
well, please do. Because you're not out of the woods. You're not out of the woods just yet. Yeah, go ahead.
That's what he said, 2-3 weeks. Taco Bell, I've already got my ticket purchased for September, but Taco Bell's not catering that, are they?
No. Nice job there, Mark. No. Nope. Taco Bell will not be any part of the event at Boulevard on September 16th. You are in the clear, my man.
Sounds good. I can't wait to go.
All right. We'll see you out there. It's going to be a good time. Mark checking in from Overland Park. I like it. No, we got top-notch caterers. We got Boulevard handling the drinks, and we are going to have a grand old time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait. Get your tickets now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. Nice way to weave it all together there, Mark. Well done. Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled has an outstanding hour, as always, for you, and that is coming up. Stay cool on this Monday morning. We're back tomorrow morning at 6.